You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition. And it lies between the pit of one's fears and the summit of one's knowledge. You are now traveling through a dimension of imagination. You just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and if this is your first time listening, Anthology is a podcast where I review the Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology series. For archives of all of my episodes, visit AnthologyPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/AnthologyPod and follow me on Twitter at OVAnthologyPod. And if you'd like to support what I do here, you can become a patron at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer, where $1 per month gets you access to tons of exclusive pre-show episodes recorded specifically for Patreon across all three of my podcasts. And at the $2 a month level, you get that plus TV commentary and review episodes. And at $5 a month, you get all that plus exclusive movie commentary tracks and movie reaction videos. And finally, at $10 a month, you get all of that plus early access to episodes and unreleased content from all of my shows. Again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay, so today on the show, I'm concluding not only my bonus episode series on Season 2 of CBS All Access's Twilight Zone reboot, but we're finishing our review series on that entire series as a whole, since it's not moving forward at Paramount+. And joining me to help bid adieu to this iteration of the Twilight Zone is fellow Twilight Zone podcasters and friends of the show, Dan and Anna from the excellent Between Science and Superstition podcast. Welcome to the show, Dan and Anna. How's it going?
It's going great. Hi.
Nice.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so glad to have you guys on to kind of for this swan song episode of the Twilight Zone, CBS All Access and everything. I was on your guys' show back in 2019 and
Yeah.
I was listening to a little bit of that before we jumped on this, and I forgot that we went on to such a tangent about 13 Reasons Why.
It's hard not to. If you watch the show, you understand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So my question is, what did you guys think of the final season of 13 Reasons Why?
Oh, my God.
And let's go episode by episode, character by character.
It was an addiction. It was an addiction, that show. That's what that was.
That was like the most hate watch show I've ever hate watched.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I don't, luckily it's been long enough that it's outside of my mind, so I won't be ranting about it. But it's just like, that was,
They did us dirty. That's what they did.
yeah, they made, I mean, if you haven't seen the show, they made Bryce a rapist good guy cowboy robot.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
That's a thing that happened at some point in the show.
Yeah, it was that last season was did you guys watch the last season? I would presume.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I did too, and it was not good. It was really weirdly inconsistent in terms of tone and genre, even. Like they did some weird horror stuff.
Yeah, they did. And the cyberpunk Terminator shit.
Yeah.
No, but the most disappointing thing about the series is they legit killed off the best character.
True.
They killed off Justin.
That's
I hope
right.
It was such a shame.
And it
Nobody
was
cares about spoilers at 13.
Yeah. So I'll put something at the top. There are spoilers on this Twilight Zone podcast. There are spoilers for the Netflix show 13 Reasons Why. And that came about so suddenly, like that. Like it was like, okay, we're on the penultimate episode of the series. We need something big to happen. We've been kind of teasing this, so let's just go ahead and have this happen and take up the entire final episode. And it's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
It sucked.
Like, okay.
It sucked so bad.
Yeah.
So much development, then wasted.
Yep.
And it's also like, why there? I just feel like there's never it's coming back to me. My the things I'm upset about. Why is there never like decent, happy representation of getting over a drug addiction? It's always has to end in this terrible thing.
Yeah. It's a weird kind of it kind of seems like a weird, like, I don't know if I'd say judgmental, but like a weird punishment thing. Like there should be like a positive kind of like, you know, overcoming addiction and, you know, getting your life back together and everything. But it's usually like ends tragically. It kind of harkens back to what I feel like what past TV shows, like in the distant past, that was more morally sound or whatever, like being like, oh, this person is doing this, so they're going to be punished or whatever.
Right. Like there's like a universal, like you get what you get kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. So it's weird. So anyway, so yeah, you guys have an excellent Twilight Zone podcast between Science and Superstition. Just for our listeners here, do you guys want to talk about how you guys got started with podcasting in general, and what drove you to pick the Twilight Zone as a topic?
Oh, sure. Wow.
Yeah.
This is more Anna's territory, why we started.
Oh, is it? Where do I begin? It just started with me and Dan just kind of experimenting on wanting to do some form of series or videos or, you know, let's play. Long story short, we listened to a lot of podcasts at the time that we started the idea, and one of the shows that I consistently loved time and time again was the Twilight Zone. And everybody kind of has a thing where in New Year's Eve, you have this like routine where you have to watch it. And just generally, it just was one of those shows to always go to. And I thought it was such a great concept. And Dan's never really watched it as much as I did. And eventually we're like, well, let's just put something together and make a podcast out about it. And that's pretty much where we started.
Yeah. Kind of. I feel like we tried to do like 8 different creative projects, and that was the one that stuck.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Like, and obviously your guys' chemistry is really great. And I really love listening to it. And something that I really enjoy about what you guys do is that it's not necessarily confined to the Twilight Zone, because you guys do those like kind of one-off, like you did a Joker review, and you do all of these kind of like tangential things. And I'm like, that's more my speed, because like with like Obsessive Viewer, I have just kind of, I'm throwing whatever at the wall and see what sticks. There's no like real format or anything. Mm-hmm. And like with Anthology, it's like confined to the Twilight Zone and other sci-fi anthology shows. And I'm like, okay, I kind of want to talk about Ex Machina too, but I kind of can't with that. But I really like what you guys do, and I'm glad to have you guys here for this episode.
Thanks. I like being here. I like Anthology. Nice. I put it on at work.
Ah, thank you. I was fishing for that, so.
We love Anthology.
Nice. Well, thank you. And so
I haven't been on Obsessive Viewer yet, so I don't love that show yet.
Yes. We'll get you on at some point. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I love Obsessive Viewer or not. That's a joke. Obviously, I love all of my podcasts. So, but here on Anthology, we're talking about the final season of the Twilight Zone, CBS All Access, and I kind of want to just kind of start out by asking you guys how you felt about this series as a whole, both seasons, and did you guys want a third season by the time you finished up season 2, and how do you feel about it not moving forward?
To answer your first question, absolutely would have loved for it to continue, because I felt like every season they kind of kept listening to some constructive criticisms from the fans, and they were doing better, and it's a shame it didn't move on to Paramount Plus. It's a huge disappointment, because it's not like they couldn't. It's not like the budget was humongous. I mean,
right.
But overall, it just had so much more potential to just keep growing and being weirder, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
I agree. I think that so I like the show as a whole, both seasons through. I think it's fun, and I think that because we were on hiatus watching season 2, I didn't have to overanalyze everything. So the Easter eggs, that they didn't like bug me as much. And when you don't have to overanalyze stuff, you kind of like just kind of, you watch it and it's fine. Like it's fun. But I feel like CBS All Access putting the Twilight Zone behind a paywall exclusive platform, probably why it didn't take off as much as they would have liked. And I think Paramount Plus having more stuff like MTV and Nickelodeon, their movies kind of suck, but I feel like Paramount Plus is for like TV, and I think that Twilight Zone could have found a home there.
Yeah, I agree. And from what I've read from the statement from Monkeypaw Productions is, I guess maybe Paramount Plus wanted a third season, and then they were just like, no, we're not going to do it. We're fine. We did our 20 episodes and we're going to move on. And I get that, but also I kind of wonder if part of that is due to maybe some of the criticism that they received over the 2 seasons, which I liked the show, but I know that there was a lot of hardcore fans of the Twilight Zone who just like destroyed it.
Right.
And
now that you mentioned that, I think that maybe it just I think Monkeypaw just outgrew Twilight Zone. Like Monkeypaw is getting like bigger and bigger.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, good for them and everything. But one of the things I was thinking about recently is how when they've kind of first announced this reboot and everything, I was really interested in the idea of them bringing on like science fiction writers to do episodes and everything. And they had like a good writer's room. There was a lot of really talented people who wrote for the show and everything. But I kind of feel like if it had gone on longer, or maybe down the road, if there is another reboot that is handled by someone else, maybe, I think it could be really cool if they got like kind of do like one-off episodes where like Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina and Devs and Sunshine and 28 Days Later, if like they had him do like a single episode. And they kind of did that with this, with You Might Also Like, that was by Oz Perkins, who is a pretty, he's a pretty,
is he the son of
name.
Anthony Perkins?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, I did not know this. This is excellent.
Yep.
That's cool.
Oh yeah. And we'll talk about the episodes specifically here in a bit, but his episode was just out there and crazy. And I kind of wish that there was a little bit more of that, like having like maybe an established science fiction person like write and direct an episode, and kind of just put it all out there as much as they can.
Wait, what was the episode that he did?
You Might Also Like the finale with Gretchen Mol and the Canaanites.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, my thing is, it's like the fact I would never want Twilight Zone to go away, because you really can't, and it's always perfect to just add it for another generation.
Yeah.
So it just keeps on living. There's always so many themes and topics to just keep putting into it, and it's never gonna go away. I hope it does get rebooted, and it's something to what you were mentioning, like having more science fiction writers, and it doesn't even, like, I know for these seasons there was a theme, and maybe like the cinematography was very consistent, but I would like just kind of it to be all over the place of just.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. I was saying when we were rewatching it to be on the show, because I watched those like 6 months ago. I do like the fact that they have like the same cinematographer, and I'd imagine the same like editing team with color correction and everything. It does feel like a consistent like whole show, but as a whole, it all feels like a package deal. But I would be, if we like took risks and did like wacky cinematography and stuff. That I feel like that's the thing, is that it kind of goes to what you were saying, where the original series, like Rod Serling would just fucking not steal, but he would just hear a story and be like, oh, cool, I'll take that one and I'll pay you for it. And then it's like you bring in all these different like people. That one like crazy good special effects artist just randomly shows up and does like 2 episodes, and he gets like nominated for it. So it's like, I think being able to pull talent from everywhere rather than having your own in-house group of people working on things is a very like especially for an anthology series, very
Absolutely.
beneficial thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like I'm gonna get hate, but I'm about to say something. But I think a lot of the criticisms that maybe the Twilight Zone fans had was I think they just wanted something that was very similar to what the original Twilight Zone was, and I think it's just boring, to be honest. It's when I did hear a lot of criticisms, it's like, oh, it's not the way this, and they just hated like new ideas that probably like a generation would deal with every day. So every time I heard a criticism, it wasn't anything about to make it more innovative or different, because at the end of the day, like, you can go really weird with the Twilight Zone, but Twilight Zone fans hate that it gets weirder, and they just want something more of the same thing. And then it's crazy when the first season, they kind of try to do that with certain episodes, and some of them were like, oh, it's not the same, it's not as like this episode. So Twilight Zone fans don't even know what they want half of the time.
Yeah, no audience does.
Yeah.
But yeah, true.
Yeah. We're in the era of fandom outrage, I guess. And one of my favorite criticisms that was levied at the Twilight Zone, and I get one side of it. I get how there were a lot of people that are like, oh, there's too much social commentary on it. And like, it makes me laugh so much, because these like a certain amount of people who get pissed off about the social commentary and the politics of like the current Twilight Zone, I guess they're like fans of the original series. And like, anytime any science fiction property is brought up and they're like, oh, why are they injecting so much social commentary in it? I'm just like, do you not understand what science fiction is? Like, do you not understand how political it is and everything?
Like specifically science fiction, right? Like, imagine, like, cyberpunk is based on the fact that there are class disparities. Like, that's the whole thing.
Oh yeah. And like, and people did the same thing with Star Trek. They were like, oh, why are they putting all of these social issues in Star Trek, I guess? And it's like that Star Trek is about like a utopic society that's past like all of the like it's so mind-boggling to me. And that's just kind of how audiences are. Like, that's why there was so much complaint about the first season, is you heard the quote over and over and over, like, 2 in your face, 2 on the nose. And like, I remember I had to tell someone at my old job that the X-Men are like stand-ins for blacks. Like, and he was an elderly black man, and I was like, you didn't like put any of this together, where it's like they don't like that you're born a certain way, and it's like, I mean, some of the most to us, some of the most obvious like social commentary just kind of can be ignored. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's just so maddening to me. Like, so kind of a peek behind the curtain. I have actually already recorded the next 3 or 4 episodes of Anthology that covers season 3 of the original series. And one of those episodes is The Shelter. And
Shelter's so good.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so freaking good. And when I recorded that, slight spoiler for that episode of the podcast, but I made sure to have a separate section after the review where I kind of briefly compare the events of The Shelter with the events of January 6th at the Capitol and the insurrection and like all of that. And I'm like kind of curious if I'm going to get any kind of resistance from the listeners on that front or anything. But I mean, it's like, I feel like I made the parallels pretty well, but it's also like that's exactly what the Twilight Zone should be, is something that you kind of like watch, and pretty much the whole point of this podcast is to watch and kind of recontextualize it or contextualize it through the lens of me as a first-time viewer, just kind of like putting it into context of my daily life and everything. So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
I've lost sleep wondering.
I think that's a great thing, that maybe it's like our kind of binge culture that we have now, where people don't really stop and like think about the stuff that they're watching. Where it's like I like our show because if there's a episode that I don't like, we'll together kind of like rewrite it. It's like, how could this premise work? And I think through that, you're seeing two, modern people take a script from the 60s and add some things that we think fits for the better. And when we did our last episode that we put up is Eye of the Beholder. Yeah. And I mean, we were like making transgender parallels to these kind of stories and like body dysmorphia. And these are things that obviously I wouldn't say Rod Serling was thinking about, but these are modern interpretations.
Yeah. And that is such a, that makes this, I mean, this classic television show and this kind of completely timeless television show, like it's what makes it timeless is that you can have all of these different applications and everything like that read of transgender issues and like gender dysmorphia and everything and body dysmorphia even, like that's a really interesting kind of spin on a classic episode of a show. And it's like that's why the series has such longevity and why it's never going to die. Like even with this iteration being canceled, I mean it's going to come back at some point in some form. And it's just it's a really good show.
Yeah, I would say before we jump into season 2, I think that criticism of too on the nose for season 1, I don't think it really applies that much to season 2, but
I agree.
I think that it's okay to have stories that are on the nose. I think like some of our oldest stories in the world, like our biblical stories, are just on the nose stories of, hey, don't sin.
Right.
It's like, obviously there's room for these stories to exist with like very clear, a very clear morality to take away from the episode. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think I'm pretty sure if you like rewatch probably or pre-listen to probably the first 3 episodes that we did of that series, I didn't like recalculate my brain yet. So I was still in the mode like, this is too on the nose. I don't like it. I can tell everything right away. And it's like by the time that we got to like 3 or 4, I was like, no, it's okay. You can do this kind of storytelling.
Well, the beauty of this show is you have a nice balance of both. Some things being too on the nose versus some things being a little bit more abstract and just for us to kind of think about. But generally, just the idea of, and everything has a social commentary on something.
True.
So when people come and criticize it for that, it's like, what have you been watching ever in your lifetime? There's always a message behind something. And Brad Serling specifically was like, I can't be too very sometimes on the nose, so I have to create like some crazy like alien episode for you to get the message. So that's always been the intent.
And those are life lessons that you should carry with you outside of just this, like outside of just a fiction series.
As I'm looking at you, I'm looking at the book of everything I need to learn. I learned in the Twilight Zone. I mean, people have made books about what they've learned within the series.
Right. Yeah. And it's like on the topic of like on the nose and their social commentary on everything. When you watch a documentary, they have a point to make when they make a documentary. It's not just like, here is just all of the research, because obviously you and I could just go and read a research paper, but they gather all of that information to make a very specific point. And the person making that point might have an agenda that you agree with or disagree with, but that's like, everybody is trying to convince you of everything ever created piece of media.
Oh yeah. And when you get into the point of like being in bubbles and everything, and I think maybe a contingent of people who complained about the social issues and how on the nose it was, especially in the first season, maybe some of them are the type of people who maybe should read more into those social issues as they're being
100%.
Yeah. And like even like one of my favorite episodes from season 1, Replay, which was fantastic and had like, it was pretty, it had some on the nose stuff, but it was also had some subtlety and everything. I feel like people didn't get that I mean,
yeah,
the
if I
broad
could
thing.
re-record and if I could re-record an episode from season 1, it would be replay because I was still in that mindset
Oh,
of like
yeah.
chew on the nose. So it's like, and I've put on like social media that I regret some of the comments I
Oh.
made on it, but it's just like I think looking back at replays is a fantastic episode.
Yeah, and to be clear, I was not
I know.
sub-podcasting you or anything.
Well, I remember I spoke to like a Black woman that is our friend, and she listened to that episode and she was like, hey, you're saying these things are like on in your face. They're in the face of Black people every single day that we live.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck.
Yep. And that kind of, and we don't need to get into this per se, because we talked about it a lot before we recorded, but like when we had the protests and everything, and like last year, I had conversations with people who were their reaction was like the standard, frankly ignorant reaction of like, why can't they say that all lives matter or anything? And I'm like, it's not like my kind of go-to thing was, imagine being a person who, if you are in a situation where you need to call 911, like for someone like me who grew up with my white privilege and everything, and even the privilege of being, in a police family and everything, like the thought that, okay, I could dial 911 and end up dead because of
Right.
any number of reasons, that never crossed my mind, because that's always been like 911 emergency. That is cut and dry. That's if I'm in an emergency, I need to dial 911. Huge segments of the population do not have that.
Yeah, 100%. I've had those conversations with people where it's like this idea of, oh, well, if you like quote unquote abolish the police, if you're that radical about it, it's like, well, who do you call when someone's breaking into your house? And it's like, I got to tell you, Black people already don't have the luxury of calling the police.
Right. Oh yeah. Yep. And
so it's like just that statement of alone breeds the idea that you are already have a privilege that Black communities don't have.
Absolutely.
And firstly, you call your homies, man. Your homie lives right next door. You say, hey,
right.
He was breaking into my house. Bring the bat.
Yeah. So season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So season 2 premiered in June, and I finally finished reviewing it in February? And
it really threw me off when I listened to your the last episode, and you're like, I recorded this in June. I was like, what?
Right.
You were just sitting on this episode for like 8 months.
I was. So what happened was I got screeners before it was released and everything, and I was all excited because I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna actually, because with season 1 I did the same thing. I kind of went on like hiatuses and everything, because I mean it's you get burnout and everything, and so. With season 2, when I got the screeners, I was like, okay, they gave me 3 screeners. I assume that they're the first 3 episodes of the season. So I recorded those 3 reviews like a couple days before the premiere. And then like I saw like, oh, you might also like is the last episode of the season. And I'm like, and like, I'm so anal retentive about this stuff. I'm like, I can't, like, even though it all dropped on one day, I can't skip all of the episodes to do the last episode and the third, and I don't know, I'm very weird about that.
I understand why you released them in that way. I was just like, I was just shocked that
yeah. Yep.
It's so weird to see a new episode come out. It's March, and then you say, I'm recording this in June.
Right.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. And funny kind of peek behind the curtain, I guess, that I don't think anyone's going to be interested to know this, but in that episode where at the beginning when I say, you might also like, it's the 10th and final episode of season 2 of the Twilight Zone. Obviously, when I recorded that, I didn't know it was the 10th one, so I just cut the 10th and final episode bit from my review of the season 1 finale and just pasted it in that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Anna, our resident editor, approves.
Nice. Well, thank you. So yeah, and one of the things kind of in overall terms about season 2, like right from the outset, when I first saw the first episode, Meet in the Middle, I was so impressed with how different and more kind of character focused it was rather than story or subject focused. And I feel like that carried throughout the whole season and everything. I was very impressed with this season.
Yeah, now you mention
overall.
it, like these are all like character, and maybe 8 is like more of a ensemble thing, but it is all like character driven.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I was just really like, I remember having the thought when, like in Meet in the Middle, when they do the glasses thing, the reference to Time Enough at Last, I was I was a fan of that, the use of that, just because for me, I was like, it's a little, I mean, it is kind of that classic Monkeypaw Twilight Zone, in your face kind of thing, but I'm like, but it's not the same context, and that's what I kind of latched onto. It's like it's a different context for that. It's not like the finale of season 1 where they just have the zoom in on the glasses on the steps of the library.
Right. Yeah, that one is way more inflammatory. I think my gripe with the Meet in the Middle one is that the Twitter account is like, did anybody catch this reference? And it's like, yes, we all did.
Oh, I would have actually enjoyed it more if I didn't see like 5 references already.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Monkey Paw references 4 Twilight Zone episodes repeatedly over and over.
Yeah, that is the other thing that it's weird. Like, I get the idea of having like, I guess I get the idea of having like Whipple be everything, like across the board, like branding. And I'm like, I guess I kind of understand that. But then like having things like Dingle ice cream, I'm like, that doesn't even make sense for the reference that you're making. Like, what does Mr. Dingle the Strong have anything to do with ice cream? And then
so that's like that's the thing, is that most of them are just like thrown in there. Most of them are literally have their own dedicated insert shot just to show you.
Yeah.
I think on the topic of the Easter eggs, I think the only one that feels genuine and good is the what is it?
Are you talking about the clown?
Yeah, the clown in the box of a human face.
Yeah.
Where it's like that was also like an identity episode. So I feel like I have these emotions attached to 5 Strangers in a Room or whatever that episode's called. So it's like I can bring that into this identity episode, so it correlates. But yeah, just seeing like a random dummy on a shelf doesn't make me feel anything.
That's a good point. And so that episode is 5 characters in search of an exit, and I haven't gotten to that episode yet. But but that's a good point. And also in that same one, it's another kind of in your face thing. But they show, when they're showing the room, they show a toy invader from the Invaders, and that also correlates in an interesting way, because that is an episode about an alien. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I prefer if they actually correlate to the episode rather than just be like, BZB Diner Cup.
Yeah. So yeah, what did you guys think of the season overall? Did I already ask that? Maybe, I think, but
we kind of it wasn't bad.
Okay.
It was, I don't know. It's like, I liked it more. I liked it more because we're, like I said, we're shying away from the things that was commonly a critique within the first season. And I don't know. It was just, that's why it's a shame that it's not going to keep going, because I was going to be like, oh, it's only going to get better because we're going to see different things. And I hope I get to see other references that kind of make sense within this episode. I mean, within the next series of episodes, but I would say it's better.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. And it's a shame. I really think it could have gone better. It could have been the inverse of 13 Reasons Why. It could have only gotten better.
That's true.
Yeah. So some highlights of the season. I don't know if we want to go like episode by episode or anything, but what what kind of stood out to you guys in terms of like what are some of your fondest memories of season 2, I guess? And I have a list of episodes here, but if you guys want to go ahead and just share some kind of thoughts, I don't know if you want to go episode by episode.
I'm trying to think if I want to give you my positive opinions or my negative opinions first.
Ooh, let's do positive first, and then we can dig into the negative. After.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ann and I will have different favorite episodes, but my favorite episode was definitely Try.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's such a good one.
I just think that I think that there are episodes that actually do that are better, but conceptually, I think this is like the best idea of, hey, Groundhog Day, imagine that you didn't get the perspective of the person repeating the day and you were just this person that's manipulating all of the events around the idea of trying to have you fall in love with them.
Yes, that one blew my mind in such a big way, because one of my favorite episodes of the original series is Shadow Play. And that it's the same thing, but like you said, it's the inverse. It's a different perspective on it, and that's how I wanted this show to deal with sort of remakes. And I just got a package at the door, so if there was a knock, that's what it was. But the perspective and everything is just so unique and so interesting. As kind of just doing the same concept, but in a completely different way.
Right.
I love it.
So you have the conceptual element of, hey, Groundhog Day, but inverse. And then you tack on like all of those like weird nice guy stuff that people say, like men say, and weird, like you kind of power dynamics, kind of talking.
Dan, I'm gonna stop you right here.
What?
Because I was just thinking about something, right? Okay.
Yeah, let me hear it.
Try or the best episodes of this season were all of like guys just being generally creepy. And you know how we had an episode in season 1 of Not All Men, and how everyone was so annoyed with how on the nose it was on that it was even it only got better in season 2, because we got 2 episodes where you see very clear examples of obsessive men.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it does it in such a nuanced way that it's like you don't necessarily realize it until you like watch it again and you kind of get the feeling. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what that episode's kind of trying to emulate. But these 2 episodes do it so well.
Right. Yeah. I would say so my favorite episode's Try, but I don't know where this falls online with Anna, but Meet in the Middle was so good. And on that topic, I feel that because it's not on the nose, you can lose the interpretation. I have the interpretation of this guy is a creepy dude and I do not like him. And I think all of this is like made up in his head.
And I agree with you on this.
Gross.
Yeah. I agree on you.
But so the ending of that episode, right, where it's you go through the whole, hey, I love you. We're talking to each other's head. Now I'm possessive of you because I'm forced to talk to you. And that gives me ownership over you for some reason. And then at the end, where he kills this woman's husband and then is sitting in the police car. This is where you can kind of like, I didn't have this interpretation until I watched it the second time. You can kind of see the gears spinning in his head where he's sitting there like, oh my God, I just went and murdered someone. And oh my God, like I'm this terrible person. And then like kind of post hoc, he comes up with like, no, actually, I'm not the crazy one. She is manipulating me to do this. Yeah. So it's like my interpretation of this is like, it's all made up in his head. And then at the end, when he's caught, he like still blames the woman for all of the bad things he did.
Yeah. And the episode kind of creates this villain in her, whereas the entire episode leading up to that is him being controlling and a little bit, in some cases, a lot bit creepy. But then switching that around, it does feel like in retrospect, especially after like what was done in Try later in the season, it feels really kind of a weird conceit to end the episode on, because they did such a great job of kind of hinting at that nice guy-ism and that entitlement and sense of ownership over someone in a relationship setting, and then to kind of turn that around and just be like, oh no, wait, this was all, you know, her doing and her orchestrating everything and using him so that she could escape her husband that we don't really know much about.
I'm just saying, mind you, within this first episode, once you see the episode again, right?
Mhm.
Once you kind of get all the twists and the turns, and you're kind of looking for how we got here. From the very the opening scene, he starts off with going on this blind date and being upset with the fact that this woman doesn't have straight hair.
Yeah.
I see that your hair, the thing that is the most open to like being different every day basis, is different than your picture.
And then he has so many opportunities to kind of just find somebody like around him, but he comes up with this whole thing with this other woman who he's never met before, which is kind of funny because when you watch this episode, you think of like the movie. Was it Her?
Her, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, we love that movie and it's so beautiful and yada yada, and this kind of has a darker twist to it.
Yeah.
And you almost feel like you're about to see them like have sex, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I thought the her sex scene was going to happen in this.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And then you start, but then you just kind of see him how he just turns away a lot of like what could be potential and healthy opportunities and keep this obsessive nature. And even if you can tell me the case of like, oh, well, she told him and stuff. And it's like, we don't really know, right? Like he probably pulled this woman up online, saw maybe where she lived, and then came up with this idea that they were going to meet in this particular situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's many interpretations, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's
the ending of that episode feels like when a guy breaks up with a girl and he was clearly the unhealthy one in the relationship, and he goes, "She's just fucking crazy, dude." It's
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think I would have. I really liked the episode, but I do think in retrospect that I probably would have liked it more if we didn't have that voiceover from her in his head at the end. Like, just have him sit with that and have us kind of infer that, you know, he did this. It wasn't a manipulation tactic. It was just him being completely unhinged from really the outset.
I agree, because I think that ending narration from her kind of, you have to take an extra step to get to the ambiguity of the episode.
Yeah.
While if they left it on him in the car and then thought like, no, she was controlling me the whole time, because there's like ground laid earlier in the episode to be like, I'm unhappy in this relationship. I want to get out and I need you to save me. So it's like you can still come up with those interpretations, but it's harder to get there with that ending narration from her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on it. Well, on one hand, I totally agree with that. But it's also like a continuation of, okay, if you can understand the vague message that it's trying to give, right? Because it's not very in your face. So you kind of, there's a lot of stuff being played here where it is very vague, but I kind of like the fact that the voice keeps going, because it just justifies it even more for him to feel like the way he feels of him being wronged. But
yeah, like he's going to keep that with him forever.
That is if you're smart about this episode and how you look at it. But, you know, either way, either criticism on the episode is definitely
in the middle.
valid.
I'll go with either of you. I think both are fine.
We all agree.
Yeah. Let's see. So the kind of the next episode, if you guys want to just kind of briefly go episode by episode, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I jumped ahead with try, but
okay. Yeah, that's
we'll
fine.
Get to try.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
Hannah has things to say about try.
I did, and Matt needs to hear it.
Nice. So Downtime was an episode that I was really excited about because it was the Jordan Peele written one. And ultimately I thought it was just okay. there are certain episodes in this season that I liked less than this, but I think that I was a little bit ill prepared for it being kind of a little bit less focused on a specific lesson or story or anything, because this is still early in the series, or in the season. So what did you guys think of Downtime?
I rewatching it again recently. I don't think it really does much to advance this topic of like AI kind of thing, where it like conscientiality and all that, because it just seems like it. I feel like I am already like equipped with all of the AI stuff that they're trying to tell me from like Black Mirror episodes and fucking what's that? What the super well known sci-fi cyberpunk.
Westworld?
I love Westworld, bro. I love Westworld.
I can forget Westworld.
So Westworld too, but I was thinking not cyberpunk. I can't. What's the well-known one?
What do you mean?
The movie based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Oh, Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like Blade Runner and Blade Runner the sequel like just take this idea of like what is identity for an AI, like, and they do it so hard and so well on Westworld to extent too that when I get to Downtime, I feel like I already know all of this stuff and they're not bringing much new to it, and I'm more curious why someone would go to sleep and want to be a fry cook.
Right.
I thought it was gonna be. I mean, they made it very on the nose. It's like this is like a Sims episode,
right?
Or this is like being a Sim, and I'm like, I don't play Sims, and I'm sorry for anybody, but I understood the concept. But I wish they kind of delved more into like Sims. I don't necessarily know how you can make Sims complex, but that wasn't horrible. That was potentially cool.
Yeah.
But I'm very in the middle about this one too.
Yeah, it's hard for me to define. So give me something to bounce off, Matt. You guide me.
Okay, so Downtime, I did like this idea of, I liked the concept of it being this just massive multiplayer online kind of thing. But I think where it kind of dragged for me was that it like you said, I don't know, like to go to sleep and then dream about being just a normal working person and everything. Like I understand that as an escape, but I also like if I spend all day working for an insurance company and then I go to sleep and I'm, like you said, a fry cook or the manager of a hotel, I'm like, I don't want to deal with customers in my dream life. I want to fly around. I want to, go into space and stuff. Like I want to do crazy stuff.
Why is it not like a paradise? Why is it like so the Matrix, right? The Matrix couldn't be a perfect simulation because then people would know they're in a simulation.
Right.
But everybody here is actively participating and wanting to be in the simulation. So why isn't it like paradise?
Yeah. And not only that, but they're also acting. Like they're changing their like
they're role playing.
Yeah. It's kind of, when you pick it apart, it kind of seems a little, it doesn't really pass the smell test that much in terms of
a little. I think I brought this up to Anna. The Grand Theft Auto Online role playing community is hardcore. And there was like a Kotaku article or a PC Gamer article that was like, I had to quit GTA Online role playing because I was a fry cook and I hated it and I didn't know why I kept doing it.
What? So, okay.
Yeah, because like you there are these servers that you go on and it's like very like in-depth role-playing stuff, and you like, most people decide to be like a cop or be like a firefighter or be a criminal, but some people, there are actual jobs to fill. So
Wow. Okay. That is insane to me.
It's wild that like capitalism can force you to do things even in your escape.
Exactly. Oh yeah. So yeah, I did like the performances in Downtime. Marina Baccarin, I think, is a talented actress, and I think she did a good job. I also really liked Tony Hale. She was in Firefly and
Yes, that's where I know her.
Deadpool. Yeah. But yeah, for the most part, it kind of just it took a little bit of effort for me to kind of really connect with that episode in any meaningful way, or at least a meaningful meaningful enough way to talk about it for an hour on a podcast by myself.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that I like think about are like not related to the episode. Where I'm more curious about the world that they're building, because
yeah,
at the end when the like manager comes and gets her to sign a contract, I was like, in my brain, I'm like, why would anyone make an AI sign a contract? But then I'm like, maybe this is a world in which AIs are like conscious enough that we have to have contracts with them. So now I'm thinking like outside of like, what is the world like outside of the simulation?
yeah.
And is this like a thing that's ever happened before of conscious AIs? But I don't know. I don't like that the wife shows up to like, I don't like that at the end, right? The wife shows up and she's like, I'm going to check into this hotel and I'm going to like get to know the person that my husband created.
Right.
But like in that world, like some dude spent a long time role playing to be the husband. And,
yeah.
And what, they're just going to have to get a divorce because the guy died and the wife is like connected to it.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh, if they had a season 3, they could have done a sequel and have it be like a marital like divorce court kind of thing and have like all that. Yeah.
See, that actually should have been what that episode should have been about. That's it. Should have twice. But I would have liked to seen that, because I feel like sometimes the problem with this season is it has certain characters where you get a good amount of their history, but when we get to the actual problem or conflict, there isn't enough substance for me to feel attached to these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
agree.
specifically in this episode, right, where it's one of the things that is like, oh my God, is when the husband like drops the accent and now he's like an Irish dude. So it's like, I don't know, if we spent less time at work and more time in the house, maybe we, the audience, could have gotten some kind of relationship and connection with the husband. So when the accent dropped and the whole world was crumbling around the main character, we're kind of like in her shoes, but instead we're kind of like observers the whole time. We're never really sympathetic.
Yeah, I agree, and it's something that's I don't know. I just feel like it was a little bit not developed enough. I think maybe it was a little too married, no pun intended, married to like the concept of the episode rather than the kind of human element of it. Maybe I don't know. It didn't leave as strong an impression as some of the other episodes.
I'm trying to think of like, because this one obviously was based off like Sims and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would be really curious if they did a Twilight Zone episode of like a dark, twisted, I don't know, virtual game of like life. That actually would have been fun.
Oh, interesting.
Because then it's like you can make different choices of how you want your, I guess, future to be with how many children and how many houses that you get. And I don't know. I think that would have been, if you're going to talk about, because this lady was like, or this character, it's like, I just got a promotion and all this other stuff, but it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, now,
but in life, it's like, that's the main thing.
And now that you say that, you could like build off of that, this like disconnection with your life goals, because you've in the game lived like so many lives and so many achievements that your real life kind of doesn't live up to your 18 virtual lives.
Right.
It's like, I don't know, you can like have interesting stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it was an episode.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yep. But the Who of You was an episode that kind of, I had an experience with it where I was watching it, and then when it revealed like it was a body swap episode, and then it became a other like more, it got more complex with the body swap and everything. I was just kind of really on board with it, and even with it being an episode that's more thrills and maybe not necessarily action heavy, but like more of a thriller kind of thing, I was strapped in and all for it. How'd you guys feel about the Who of You?
I loved it.
Yeah, I
love
agree.
this.
It's not that it's action orientated, it's that it's there are stakes, and
Yes.
and you feel those stakes the whole time, and the more bodies get swapped, the higher the stakes get, because more people are being traumatized by your terrifying ability. Yeah, I thought that it was able to keep tension throughout the whole episode.
And the thing I was telling Dan, we were just talking about this before we were going to get on. And he was like, yeah, and this is kind of like showing him how to be like a better actor and stuff. And I'm like, honestly, he was never that good of an actor. And it wasn't even him. It was like whoever got in his body got better with impersonations. So he never ended up being a good actor, or never will. The only thing he gained out of it was his relationship. And now he's a hot black guy and he can get more roles.
Yeah, people want to hire the big hot black guy, man.
Yeah. That was such a fun kind of twist at the end. Like that was just a nice kind of weird and out there kind of ending for it. And I don't know, I liked it for that. I thought it was a pretty fun ending.
Yeah, it was super funny because Anna can somehow remember all of these episodes, and I completely forgot everything. So I was like, when the detective or the guy in the detective's body knocks on the door and she just like lets him in, I'm like, why is she just letting him in? I don't see his badge anywhere. And it's like, do you not remember the end of this episode? And I was like, no.
Well, one of the things I loved was the actual actor, Ethan Embry, who's fantastic, by the way, in this episode.
Oh yeah.
But one of the funniest characters he played was just this child, and just being him, like pretending to be him in this cop car and just being traumatized. Like, now this is going to be a thing that's forever stamped on his life, that he got body swapped with a robber. And the one scene where they're in the car and he's like, you want to get ice cream? He's like, yeah, I do. It's one of the best scenes in the series was that.
That was fantastic. And Ethan Embry's performance was just so good in that whole episode. And yeah, that was probably my favorite part of it, when him in the car. God, that was great.
It's so weird to me that that's the guy from Can't Hardly Wait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Can't Hardly Wait is like one of my favorite movies, to be honest.
It's so good.
Yes.
It's so great. It's so great.
Why did I want to quote that movie recently? It was to do with the Twilight Zone.
I mean, we quote a lot of it.
It was, I forget, but someone had some kind
Probably
of
like a Seth Green quote you were looking for.
No, there's a specific line where he goes like, somebody, more like nobody.
Oh yeah, bully, but I forget.
Someone like says a line very simple.
Probably in a small town.
Oh yeah, I think it was in Small Town. Someone says a line like that, and I was like, why did he sound like the bully from Can't Hardly Wait?
Oh man, I don't remember that line from the Twilight Zone.
It was like it's not the exact line.
Tone.
Okay.
It's kind of like the tone that the character came across, but it might have been either between A Small Town or Try Try. We found something.
Okay.
I'll try to connect anything to Can't Hardly Wait.
Oh, me too.
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's a classic. So should we move on to Ovation?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't really have much to say on the Who of You. I liked it a lot. I think it's interesting. It kind of goes with this theme throughout the entire show so far, which is like identity.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a clinch pin in most of these episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because kind of the tagline of the season was escape, and there was a lot of effort, from what I've understand, to make it about identity and kind of identity crises, which I think is something that I enjoy. I think it does a good job of kind of having that be the through line throughout the season as a theme. And it makes me wish that they would have more seasons so they could explore more kind of threaded themes throughout each season.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to have like an anthology series where like each season is its own like theme.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Because like, I mean, generally like the anthology series has an overarching theme where it's like science fiction or
right.
stuff like that. But yeah, I like the through line. I don't. Yeah.
So Ovation was. I think we might talk about our rankings at the end of this, maybe, because I did just fire off a ranking before recording, but Ovation I put at the bottom. I kind of feel
we're
like
on the same page with that.
Nice. I kind of feel like it was just it kind of seemed a little too close to the comedian from season 1. Like in a weird way, it's a very similar plot, and I don't know. I just didn't connect with it. How'd you guys feel about Ovation?
I don't know. It was when Dan asked me about it, I was like, yeah, I don't really like it. It was it's one of those like on the nose messaging, which is fine, but I just don't feel like it does it well. And I think one of the biggest problems that we both talked about was that it was just the one song, and then half of the time I didn't even really like how much like the crowd started clapping, and I don't know, there wasn't enough time to really develop the character and how get her to be like obsessive with being like the most famous singer. But that's, I don't know, it's I feel like the comedian actually did it better now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, Ovation was just it was
Yeah, same here. It felt like, what if the comedian but with music?
Yeah, and not even music, because half of the time you couldn't.
Right. Dan, how about you?
I think that I don't care if something is on the nose. We talked about that. I think that that is like a fine way of telling a story. I just think that when the on the nose thing is the topic of, hey, fame sucks. It's like, yeah, I feel like I know that there's a lot of people out there that aren't on that same page, where it's like when Anthony Bourdain kills himself, it's like, oh, well, like he had everything. Why did he like have depression?
Or heck, like, even more recently with Harry and Meghan, like, oh, they're rich. What are you talking about?
It's like, why do rich people have problems with their family being racist towards them? So it's like, I understand that there is this disconnected society where if you get a certain level of fame, people just assume that your problems go away. But when the whole like premise of this episode is, one, it's just the most like be careful what you wish for episode I've ever seen. And it's also just only one note. I don't care if it's on the nose, but I need you to have more complexity about it.
Yeah. There was such a leap from her being hungry for fame to being willing to murder. That that is where it kind of lost me. And as someone who started podcasts specifically to become a world-renowned famous person who doesn't need to worry about anything, it hasn't happened yet, but that's my goal with all of what I do.
That's why we all do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It reminds me, just in a tangential way, a really great line from The Simpsons where Milhouse and Bart are like, they're bored or they're upset about something or whatever, and then I think Milhouse says, I can't wait till we're teenagers, then we'll be happy. But Ovation,
it's just one note. There's not much to it.
You know what else didn't make sense is the sister. You know what I mean? It could have been anybody that would have gotten famous, but I get, because I actually don't get why the sister was like, now I'm not being a nurse, I just want to be a singer. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no lead up to that.
I
whatsoever.
If I remember correctly, I think the implication might be because she got rid of the thing for her, and that's where it kind of transferred over to her. But
she had like the coin that gives you the fame,
right?
But it's weird. It's weird that the coin only makes you a talented musician.
Exactly. And also, I just had a real problem with how it was. and I normally don't like to, and I think I prefaced this the same way in my episode about it, but I don't like to be like I guessed what it was along the way kind of thing. Because I mean, I don't know. I don't really like faulting something for that. But
Right.
I mean, when they're concealing the identity of the singer that she is like going to go murder and everything, and like there is a very small, very finite amount of characters in the story, like
Right.
it makes it painfully obvious like what the big twist is going to be, and that was just a little it kind of soured it for me even more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think that you can. Anna when Anna and I were talking about this, Anna mentioned that apparently the only way to like react is to clap, and I think that you can also go more into how obsessive fans can be.
Yeah.
And like, so it's like here that just the idea of like, oh my god, everyone claps is like the bad thing, but like you can, and you know they get chased when they're jogging and stuff, but
Yeah.
there are people that do way worse things.
Actually, that would have been perfect because we have we have 2 creeper episodes, and that would have been a perfect episode to get it from.
Like a stalker kind of
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I would have felt attacked because I spend my weekends flying over to where Stephen King lives and just kind of hanging out there and kind of waiting to see if he goes for like a walk or something so I can kind of chase him. So that's where I'm at with that. I feel like I would have been a little offended by that. But yeah, yeah.
Not no. I again, it's hard for me to like rapid fire off these because my first thought is like how to fix these. But yeah, for what we get, it's just too one note, too not well written. I don't know. I know that's like a shitty criticism of like, oh, it wasn't written better. I would have liked it if it was written better. But
More developed.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the next episode, Among the Untrodden, I actually just on my ranking list, I kind of pushed that up because I'm suddenly remembering like how much I liked Among the Untrodden. That was a really interesting story that really kind of put me into the perspective of like high school kids and how that is such a a time where I often think about like I had a pretty good like high school like experience and everything like way back in the day, but I frequently find myself thinking like I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore.
Right.
It's just like the social dynamics and everything, and I feel like Among the Untrodden really took that and took like the insecurities and the like cautious acceptance that that the character felt in that group really to some interesting places. How did you guys like Among the Untrodden?
I want to know why it's like one of the most popular episodes because
or at least on IMDb ratings. It's it's like top 3. I don't know. I feel like there's some things that I like in it, but I feel like by the end, it just kind of gets convoluted because we start getting like red herrings followed by plot twists, and it's like I don't know.
A lot of good elements, but very muddy.
Yeah, it does.
For me,
it does get a little. It does get a little convoluted. I will definitely cop to that. But I think that the kind of the structure of it and the development between the 2 girls in it, I feel like is a pretty strongly written arc in the story as a whole. So I kind of forgive it that kind of convoluted things. Like I don't even like I didn't revisit this one recently, but I remember being slightly confused about like the last scene when the like the other girl or like shows
Yeah.
up. Like I remember, I still don't know. Like, is that supposed to be her again, or is that a different girl, or like what's the
so
deal
it's
there?
like the whole thing, right? It's either I think the thing that she manifests crumbles when it's fulfilled its purpose.
Right.
So what is the purpose of this second girl?
Yeah.
And also was the purpose of the first girl to murder all your friends? Like,
Right. Yeah. It does get pretty convoluted when you pick the threads of it. I will definitely give you that.
but I would say that I've seen a lot of cringy adults trying to write teenager stuff, and I didn't think it was that bad in this episode.
Nice.
I don't know. Have you ever played the game Life is Strange?
I have not. No.
It's for what it is. It's actually a very good like interactive storytelling game.
Okay.
But
Nice.
the writing of the teenager saying hella every 3 seconds and stuff like it's just so like cringy to me.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. But and I don't know. I know that you're like a big Stephen King fan, but
Mhm.
I hate Stephen King bullies like with a passion.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's like I just never know why bullies have to be so fucking bad in TV shows.
I definitely get that. And I do think that maybe my love of Stephen King is what really attracts me to this, because this and A Small Town both feel like they are riffs on kind of what Stephen King is most famous for. Like in Among the Untrodden, it's this character dynamic that it feels very inspired, maybe not patterned after, but definitely inspired in some cases by Carrie. And A Small Town feels just like the quintessential Stephen King small town story.
Right.
But yeah, I do get that, like the viciousness of bullies. I've also thought about this. I don't know why. To preface this, I don't know why I keep thinking about high school, but but like seeing bullies in fiction and reading bullies in fiction and everything, it just seems weird that like even like the most rudimentary and easy bully writing in fiction, it's like, oh, I'm gonna give you a wedgie or a swirly or something or
Right.
all that. I'm like, I'm gonna shove you in a locker. I'm like, I went to like a public high school and I don't like, they were just really mean to people and
Yeah.
there were fights and
It's
everything.
mostly verbal abuse.
Exactly.
But, I think Flash in the new Spider-Man series, the Spider-Man movies, I think he's like the most accurate bully that I've seen, which is just this guy who kind of thinks that he's better than everyone, but he's like not even.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I keep thinking about this particular topic, and because of this episode and considering it's like an all-girl school, I'm thinking of like pulling my Rolodex of girl movies, and I mean, there's one thing, it's like super catty and shady, and there has been so many movies that I think perfectly emulate that, like Jawbreaker and Mean Girls, and there was hints of like, I got like a little bit of The Craft with this one, just a tad. And yeah, I don't know. Like in the beginning, it felt like, oh, it's so cliche. Like when she first came into the classroom, and then I thought about the science fair, and I was like, how did no teacher saw this project beforehand? Like this is just this is a lot for these girls.
Oh my! And Anna gets on the science fair project for like how none got involved and said, hey, what the fuck? This is terrible. But I'm looking at it like that is like 8 different audio or 8 different video devices, and there's 2 different video streams where it's like one is the imagery and the other 2 monitors are like flash slideshow. So I'm like, who helped them with all these HDMI cables?
Who is the audio engineer? Who is the editor? Who is the graphic designer in this group? I want to know. These girls are talented, but it's beyond cruel.
That's a good point. And I remember, like, maybe my memory is failing me, but I remember as it's going through like the the science fair, like just the cameras just going there. I feel like all the rest of them were like just conventional like poster boards with stuff on it and stuff.
Poster boards, like a solar system.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, I'm the main girl science project of like wish blush. I forget the question on that one.
It was like, what's the better blush?
Yeah, I was gonna be like, that sounds something like a mean girl would just kind of like come up with, or just something very half-assed. But I don't know. I didn't hate it. I mean, I liked the ending, and it was like we have the question of like how did she fulfill the purpose? And I guess it's mainly like now that I'm thinking about it, was like maybe the ending was she fulfilled the purpose of understanding like kind of how her powers work, and maybe
like
this next one is just the sense of having a friend, but I don't quite know.
Yeah, because I was trying to like follow it through, knowing the ending the second time I watched it, and they do drop like they lay some groundwork of like, you know, sometimes you might like subconsciously do this, which is why she was able to view the flashcards without like actively thinking about it. So it's like maybe she subconsciously manifested the girl, and I think like the episode tries to say that the purpose of her was to have an actual friend rather than like the fake bully friends. But then like I do like the idea of this first manifestation is like the practice run of I'm trying to figure out my powers and stuff like that.
I think that there's some subtext to it in the sense that it's about her own identity, and because she is I'm trying to discreetly bring up the the episode because I can't remember the character names, but I feel like the Madison, I feel like she's the one with the powers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the red herring like plot twist thing at the end.
Yeah. So I feel like the kind of subtext of it is that Madison is a character who is in with the cool clique or the mean clique and everything, but she has this identity crisis where in kind of not a byproduct of that, but kind of on the periphery of that, she also has these powers that she can manifest these things with her mind and everything. And this person she can manifest to kind of be like an extension of her subconscious, trying to teach her like how to be herself and how to unlock her true self. And I kind of wonder if that kind of has some subtext to it or some commentary to it about obviously like puberty and like figuring out like who you are and what like kind of adult you're going to be or something. It's definitely like I manifested this to like be I hate my friends and I need new friend, I need new outlook, and I need all that. But I just don't know why the second friend shows up at the end. Oh yeah, me neither.
What I thought was really funny. That in the beginning we got very cliche bully, but specifically there was when the other I guess I forget the other character's name, like Irene or something. I think so. She walks into the classroom and then she sits down, and then Madison gives her like this flashcard that's like, what are you, a slut or a dork or whatever? And I was like, wow, she really prepped these cards for like whoever she just wanted to pick.
It's like her business card.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Gathering information for a survey.
Either way, she's still all of that because she's gonna do whatever to make fun of her. But
right. Yeah, I don't know. I still liked it, but it does have its issues and its convolution and everything.
I think that if you like narrow down like exactly what you want to say with this, you can. I think this would be great. I think this has potential to be a great episode.
Oh, absolutely.
I just think that it got too muddy along the road that I just didn't get there for me.
Absolutely.
You know what it was? I feel like they really combined both Madison and Irene to be the both like magical ones, when I think they should have just kept hinting more and more about it being Madison. Because like Irene like what falls and then she's like fine, and then she starts going like doubting herself and stuff, and it takes too much time with her trying to understand her powers even more.
Yeah, that was the thing at the end of the episode where it's like, you only have the powers. I only have powers when you're around, and you're the one with the powers. And it's like, no, you're the one with powers. So now we're like gaslighting each other, but they're manifestation. And then at the end, it's like, no, actually, it was you that had the powers all along. I just didn't know why we had to have like the red herring plot twist conversation at the end.
Yeah, it definitely seemed a little, my memory of it seems like it was a little too contingent on just like being a red herring and at the sacrifice of being a more complete story with whatever subtext they were getting at. So yeah.
But I also I can understand like why there when it comes to identity and stuff, I understand why you would immediately like reject that and blame someone else, which would inherently come with those conversations. So I don't know. I'm not the professional writer on staff, but I wish that it was done a little tighter.
Yeah. Yeah. But the next episode, 8, this is one that is also ranked pretty low on my list in terms of ranking, but I do appreciate it because we get kind of a little bit of a departure from what's come before it in both seasons, even in that we have like a just straight up monster episode. And I dug it for that, but and there were some filmmaking techniques that I really appreciated in it, but ultimately it kind of felt like it was just a little too focused on being a monster episode and not have it be like a character thing, which is what I'm more into. How do you guys feel about 8?
8, it's like within our top 5.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Nice.
I really, really enjoyed this this episode because of what it was, which was like this B horror like monster like or octopus is taking over the world, and it sounds so silly at the very end, but I gotta love it. Like I can't hate it because it's so ridiculous, but it's so fun at the same time.
Yeah, but nice. I feel that it never tries to be anything that it's not being.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's that guy's name?
Joel McHale.
Yeah. Joel McHale, every single piece of his dialogue is exposition.
Absolutely.
But I feel like it's so funny because of the context of the episode.
I don't think I would have wanted any other way. And I like the fact that it is Joel McHale specifically.
And I mean, he's such a freaking pro. Like he really sells that. Like he's sidled with all of this exposition and everything, but he's very convincing with it. Like I love Joel McHale, and I think he does a really good job in the episode with what he's given.
Yeah, and I the ending of this episode, you know, The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror where dolphins take over the world.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
It just has like such that vibe, and it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
So,
I don't think I made that connection.
So it's like and there is just something so dearing to me that we have an episode about man trying to adapt the DNA of an octopus to make man better. And then we get like a hacker squid come in and say like, nope, actually, we're going to get all the good stuff. And it's like, it's just so funny. Like, I love it.
This is what I'm talking about of what I want in more Twilight Zone episodes. Some things that are so outlandish, but it just works. Okay. It just makes sense. And this is probably one of the most hated ones because of that. Because of that fact, but it just works. You need something as outlandish as this episode for the Twilight Zone.
I think my biggest critique of the episode is that it's the 6th episode and its title is 8.
You know what? That's why it's even better, because it's that.
Yeah, that frustrates me a little bit. Like, as I said, I recorded my review of You Might Also Like, and I couldn't release it until I finished all the other episodes because of my brain. And so having episode 6 be 8 was so frustrating to me, especially after last season. The first season has the 6th episode be 6 Degrees of Freedom, and I'm like, yes, that's my jam. Like,
Yeah,
you guys,
that makes sense.
you guys are making me not have like little panic attacks when I read the episode titles. And then they betrayed me in season 2 with 8.
Even before we were about to watch this, I was like telling Dan, I'm like, we almost done. It's 8. And I'm like, no, baby, the episode is called 8. And I'm like, oh, right. Right. But now I absolutely love that this is it. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
It like messes the whole episode. Everything about the episode just fucks with you. And it's perfect because that's what I want. This is what I want.
And it is a fun monster movie episode. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were having this conversation when we watched it, is that there is like a hard like gore scene in this one with the eyeball being ripped out.
Yes.
And that scene is like so good, and it kind of grounds like the whole minutiny of the whole like stupid octopus situation. But
so
I don't know.
cool.
I really like that. Like, rather than, there's 2 types of B horror movies in my mind, which is like over the top gore as opposed to like really personal gore.
Yeah.
And like an eyeball slowly being ripped out by a tentacle is like, what a gross scene.
Yeah. And I'm usually pretty squeamish with that kind of thing. Like the horror that I like is like emotional horror, like freaking Hereditary, like being about like mourning and everything and just like grief. And like that's the kind of thing that kind of messes with me. But like actually seeing like the gore of that, I thought that was incredibly well done.
Yeah, I don't remember much of our first viewing, but I remember the first time we watched that episode and both of us just screaming that the eye is being ripped out.
I mean, but one of my biggest problems is I love horror so much. Like, you don't even know. I mean, recently my earring collection has gotten bigger because it's a lot of horror earrings. But specifically, right? My biggest problem with horror movies is I sometimes connect a lot of gross imagery with food. And even while watching this episode of 8, I'm eating pad thai and it's just like an octopus just squeaming around. And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And like one of my biggest like traumatization, like like scenes in movies was like in Aliens. Like the facehuggers were the grossest things that I've ever seen in my life. And I just cannot eat when I watch these movies. And I wish I didn't have that bother me, but it just does.
I know. I don't have that association at all. I'm just like chowing down while we're watching this like disgusting stuff.
I'm like, can I get a salad?
I kind of have that kind of thing too. Like I can't like eat while I'm watching something with gore. Like I was listening to an audiobook, a Stephen King audiobook, and there's a short story in one of his collections called Survivor Type, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make myself some food and just listen to this story on Audible, and like as I'm preparing my food, I think the story reveals itself to be about a guy who is on a deserted island after a shipwreck, and he's a surgeon, and in order to survive, he kind of cuts his limbs off, or starts cutting his foot off and then eats the foot, and then he just slowly chips away at more of his body and everything. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can eat while I listen to this.
I know you can't see my face, but it's not good.
Also, fun fact, not effective. Eating your own body consumes more energy than you're getting.
Oh yeah. Yep. I've tried it, so it's tough.
I think like the only time in which I probably put food down watching something was like we were watching the Woody Allen documentary, and I'm just like, I don't want to eat right now.
Yeah, I haven't started that yet.
Gore.
Yeah.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
For any kind of like high profile celebrity case, you're gonna have to go into detail, and they go into detail.
That's what I hear. Yeah. Oof. Yep. So 8. I think you guys liked it more than I did, but
definitely.
Yeah, but I do appreciate it for what it is, a monster Twilight Zone episode. I definitely appreciate it for that.
Which there aren't like many of, right?
Not that I'm aware of. Like in the original series, I mean, you've got like the monster on the plane, and
Yeah.
yeah, and that is an interesting kind of departure, I guess, from the main canon, I guess. I wonder if like the 80s Twilight Zone or the 2000s, like 2002 Twilight Zone, I wonder if they had more monster kind of things.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
80s feels like that was like the monster like time to shine.
Absolutely.
Because what's it called? Didn't John Landis do the Twilight Zone movie?
Yeah.
A segment of it.
I mean,
Right.
he is like.
Oh yeah, he's a monster.
I mean, besides the fact that he's a monster.
Okay.
But I'm just saying he did like with American Werewolf in London. I mean, monsters are kind of like somewhat of his specialty.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's true.
I don't know. You figured that would make sense, right? Like at some point in the Twilight Zone, you'd have like a monster feature, but I guess we just haven't seen it. The closest thing I can think of is that like one scary bunny in like that one Twilight Zone. I think it was the movie, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's not dedicated to just what the monster in this episode is.
Yeah, in 8 kind of feels a little bit more in line with like an X-Files episode than a conventional Twilight Zone episode, which I appreciated for that. It's an interesting and effective episode, I think. Just it's so out there and weird. It took a few viewings before I really appreciated it.
While just like trying to scroll through Twilight Zone episodes, there's the Dummy, which is like kind of a monster episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's hard. These are like
a stretch.
These are like literally the stretches you have to make. There aren't like monster episodes.
Yeah, the Living Doll episode, what I know of it at least, could be one.
Yeah, I was going to say that one too because I love that episode. I don't know if you watched it because that's like season 5, but
does the devil count?
That's a good episode.
Oh yeah,
Hitler's in Genie in the Bottle or whatever episode's called.
Oh, nice. Well, not nice, but you know,
cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Howling Man.
Yeah,
like the devil counts.
That's the devil.
You know, he was kind of like a wolf at first.
Mm-hmm.
A very hairy man, and then turns into.
Isn't like the point of most episodes that people are the monsters?
That's true. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
It only makes sense to now get an actual monster.
Now that people aren't monsters anymore.
Right.
But you know what? People take Twilight Zone as an inspiration. So I think it was only a matter of time. The Twilight Zone used a couple of things from its predecessors, or you know, like like X-Files and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at the very least, it gave Twilight Zone a monster episode.
Yes.
Yep. A monster that can hack and everything.
Bro, hacker squids, man. They're terrifying.
That's so interesting and so weird. I can't fault the episode for that at all.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So the next episode 7, was A Human Face, which this is another one that kind of took a little bit of time for me to really kind of latch onto. But what I really found compelling about it was this story of this couple isolated and having to deal with their grief and their opposing view of their grief and the loss of their daughter. And I just thought that was kind of a powerful kind of sentiment and an emotional journey for the characters. How'd you guys feel about A Human Face?
Dan, you want to tell them where we put this one on the list?
This is dead last.
Interesting.
Don't like this episode.
Okay, nice.
I didn't like this episode when we watched it the first time, and having seen WandaVision, I am concreted in the idea that I don't like this episode.
Interesting. Yeah, WandaVision handles that type of grief story spectacularly well. I'll give you that. But yeah.
So it's like my main thing is that this is very like entry level philosophy, right? And I mean, WandaVision also is very entry level philosophy, but it's being delivered from two robots fighting midair, and it's being delivered in like this like witch alternate reality kind of thing. So it's like the way that it's presented, and it's being delivered from characters that you genuinely like, especially if you've like watched these movies for so long,
right?
So it's like think that WandaVision does this stuff really well, as opposed to a human face where half of the episode is just reverse shot in an empty hallway. And it's like,
yeah. I think I liked it as the conflict between the couple, and the contrast of that being like it should be something that they went through together, and they should have maybe not become stronger because of it, because I don't know, I've not been in that situation obviously, but I kind of just feel like there's a certain level of despair between them, and despair in terms of how they view what happened in their life, that I found particularly compelling. Yeah. Anna, how did you feel about it?
Well, it's at the bottom for a reason. Kind of Dan hit the same points I was gonna make about that, but I feel like it's just one of those episodes where I think you get a lot, but I think the execution of the characters just didn't work for me.
Okay.
In the grief, and because I know like the dad, I think his name's like Chris Maloney, right, from Law and Order.
Yeah.
And he's generally like a really good actor, but
Right.
I don't know. It was so one note for me of like a level of grief of like, you're not my daughter in this, and they're just trying to trick you. And I don't know. I feel like there could have been more desperation from these characters with handling their daughter's death, that maybe the lead up where eventually there's acceptance, like it would have kind of connected more with me, but I just didn't feel anything like for these characters that when they did accept it. The only thing I liked about this episode was the fact that before the alien turned into the daughter, he was just kind of this cute little creature that kind of reminded me of Meek from Thor Ragnarok.
Oh yeah.
But again, I love the concept, like, because grief, I mean, the topic of grief is just a really interesting concept, and like specifically in Hereditary that we talked about, they handled that so well, and it's so good. But for this episode, I feel like there needed to be a little bit more time for me to fully connect.
That makes sense. And it is kind of, again, it's another situation where we're being given so much character backstory kind of upfront, and then that is kind of pushed aside in favor of this kind of crazy alien invasion story that we also have to catch up on toward the end. And overall it worked really well for me, but I can definitely see how it could cause a disconnect with other people.
I feel that its pacing is really bad, because like I think that if you kept the momentum of like the disparity between the two parents, and I do agree that it's kind of with Anna that it's kind of one note, in that the mom is the emotional reaction and the dad is the logical reaction, and there's no like kind of cross wires between the two. But if you just kind of keep the momentum of like the dad trying to like accept, or the mom is consistently being like, I miss my daughter, I love my daughter, and the dad is like, this is a siren, it's going to kill us, and then we just go to like a hard pause in the hallway and just explain like, I'm an alien, I come from this planet, our job is to do this, and I am doing this. And I was just like, oh my God, we're just putting everything on the shelf for this.
Another exposition dump.
The only thing I can think of that I really liked, maybe now looking back at it, was kind of like the daughter, but not really the daughter, like the alien kind of saying points that maybe the daughter was trying to say before she died to the parents about how they kind of were with her. There was a one scene specifically where it's like, Mom, you were just too attentive, and Dad, you barely were there. You barely were my dad. And it was just things that they didn't expect for her to say that I liked. But other than that, I don't know. It just didn't really connect with me like that.
When there's like episodes,
and you have such a good theme. You have such a great theme to really talk about, but yet it just doesn't. It doesn't nail it for me.
When there's like when the theme is identity and the topic, it's just, this episode is just as much about identity as it is grief, because the parents are grief and the daughter is identity, and then you go into like the whole I forget, like Theseus's ship of like how much of a person has to be a person for you to like that person to be them. And and like I'm always just curious of like, you can't just like land here, look like her, and read her diary and be like, I'm your daughter. Especially I was annoyed because something that the daughter would have went through and would have been like a huge like change of a person's life is battling cancer. So like, does this alien like have any of the experiences of what it's like to battle cancer? Because that's a huge character change for a person.
Yes. Well, she didn't have cancer.
Oh, how'd she die? I thought
No.
she had cancer or something.
The implication is that she killed herself. She OD'd on pills.
Okay, because in the picture she has like very short hair.
Oh yeah.
And the daughter here has like longer hair. So I thought that there was like maybe a chemotherapy at some point or something.
I can definitely see that, but the thing that I actually latched onto pretty closely in the episode is that they make references to how the mother made excuses for, maybe that's not the right term, but like made like rationalized that, oh, she didn't actually kill herself, she just accidentally OD'd on pills. And so that kind of disparity between the parents, where the mother is like, well, she was so scattered and everything that she accidentally OD'd on pills, and that's how she died, where the father, like you said, is the more logical one, and it's like, no, she had some emotional problems and she ended up ending her life, and that's what we need to confront.
I would continue that train of thought I originally had then of, instead of battling cancer, dealing with we live in an opioid epidemic. Like dealing with drug addiction is a huge thing. So it's like, does the alien show up and just remove character flaws and be like perfect daughter? It's like, I don't know. I have more questions. And
interesting. Yeah.
The thing about this episode for me is that at the end, so it's like everything that we just said is like very particular to individuals and how we interpret things and how we process grief and all of that. And then at the end, when you walk into town square and every single house all had the same thing, they all came to the same conclusion. It's that kind of why are so many people, every household has a dead person?
Like, I was wondering that too, like, because I think there's one, or maybe I'm misremembering, but there's like one with like a dog, and I'm like, okay, well, I understand that, like maybe they brought back the dog or whatever, but then I was also and I was just thinking like, well, maybe this is me giving a little bit too much credit to the episode, but I'm like, well, maybe it's like, maybe they're not all like a bunch of dead kids or dead spouses or anything, but like maybe it's like what they actually want. Like if they want a child but maybe can't have a child or haven't had a child yet, the aliens are giving them the child so that they can kind of become a complete in their want.
You know, Matt, if the entire premise was that premise, I'd be 100% on board.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
This idea of like not being able to conceive, and then there's an alien, so then you're like, I don't know, and then it's like, no, I'm enough of both of you, and I have these character traits of you, and then you're forced to like confront some of your negative traits that you passed on to your fake kid. It's like, I don't know, there's a lot of like interesting things that you can do with that.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting. And it's also kind of weird that a similar concept is explored in You Might Also Like in a very different way, but it's just it's kind of interesting. Do you guys want to move on to A Small Town?
I'd love to. I've said all I can about.
Okay. So A Small Town is my favorite episode, not only of season 2, but of the entire series of these 2 seasons. I don't know where it ranks with you guys, but I just adored this episode because it felt like an interesting reprieve in that it wasn't all like dour and dark and everything. It was this main character being this person who just wants to do good in his community and carry on the legacy of his dead wife. And the kind of villain of the episode isn't like he's an oafish kind of mayor, not even like really corrupt politician, but just a sleazy politician. And like it's just, there's a lightness to it, and the community aspect really kind of stood out to me. How did you guys like A Small Town?
we're all pretty much on the same page with this one.
Nice.
It's the same thing. It's such a wholesome episode.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm huge on local community action and stuff. So the idea of a story, if it's kind of like it shows that one person can change a lot. And so the story kind of starts with like one person with supernatural abilities can change a town for the better. And then we naturally arrive to the conclusion of, well, if everybody took the time to make daily efforts to make your community better, then we could you don't need the supernatural powers. This is a thing that we can do on our own. So it's like, it's just very wholesome. I love the messaging. I love like everything about this episode.
Nice. Yeah, me too.
This is I'm
Go
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna agree more.
I was just gonna say that this one is one of those direct messaging, but it's cute and it nailed exactly what it needed to, and I don't know, it's not as complex. It's just like you just put your part in, and things can get accomplished. So.
Absolutely.
Which we can all relate to.
Oh,
basically.
Absolutely. And especially kind of in light of the last year with the pandemic and everything. And I feel like the reactions to the pandemic have really, like, the differing reactions to what's gone on in our communities and country and world as a whole, but like on a micro level, like the community base of that, like I'm sure that people who ordinarily wouldn't have much say or much input in the community aspect of it probably had some opinions over the last year with the pandemic and everything, because it became more about, like, obviously the whole kind of the go-to kind of, I don't know if I'd say chant, but the thing was like, we're all in this together, and that kind of breeds this communal aspect of it.
Separate, but what is it? Separate but together, alone but together, or something like that.
Yeah, alone but together. And that's something that makes this community base of the, like, this communal aspect to the story of a small town kind of resonate with me. And I'm more partial. I'm someone who will naturally gravitate to a small town kind of community story in fiction. And I think that this just blew it out of the water for me. I really loved it.
I do feel that people don't realize how much power they actually have within their community. I mean, Anna and I live in Philadelphia, and bigger cities are harder to accomplish because there's more people, and more people means more hoops to jump through. But like, if you're in a small town, you can be surprised that you can just show up and be on like a community board because that's just a vacant seat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I haven't done any of that, but I know that it is.
I mean, to some extent, I haven't either. Like, I the most I really do for my community is like volunteer my time on election day. I've worked like the past like 4 or 5 elections.
Oh, that's awesome.
But my sister-in-law, she is like,
oh, she's great.
She kind of started this whole. Her and another like local mom started this whole campaign about getting lead out of soil.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's like it's genuinely a thing that like you don't really think of, but Philadelphia is really old, so we have a lot of like old dirt that just has old factory lead in it and stuff, and it's just not like good for kids to play in. It can lead to like damaging things. So I've seen her like go through all of the bureaucracy, and she's like, yeah, she's done actually like a Wawa. I don't know if you have Wawa, but a convenience store around us that's a chain was like shut down for a week because she was able to like get the legal whatever the path was to renovate all of the dirt around that area because kids played there and there was high lead. So it's like these aren't things that you think of, but one person was able to renovate an entire like section of dirt that kids play in to be safer.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that's kind of like what the small town like idea is that maybe it's a paint job, maybe it's filling in a pothole here, but like there's a lot of like small changes. Sometimes it's really fucking annoying when you're in a big city, but there's a lot of there's a lot of individual change that can happen, and all it takes is just putting in a little effort.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone listening who lives in like a small community or even a big city, like you too can drop a giant spider in the middle of your community.
Yes.
To threaten
Run
people
the
you don't
mayor
like.
out.
Yeah.
But that's the opposite end, right? It shows how important it is that you vote for proper elected officials, because so if one bad person is in charge of a town, you can really fuck over the town.
Absolutely. And also having this kind of short memory also, like that scene where the shop owner guy is like, oh, I think Mayor Conley's doing all this stuff. So he's just, trying to butter us up, but I'm going to probably vote for him. And it's like, it's just interesting to see like that seems authentic, that like people don't have a long memory about things. So like when it's an election year or anything, like it's, the politicians try to butter people up, their constituents up. And it's like, there's a lack of accountability. And that's something that I think is explored really well in this episode in a very wholesome way.
And you also don't consider like what someone might gain from it. I think that guy was getting, I don't remember 100%. I think he was getting like financial gain to like allow the highway to be built.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I know in Philadelphia, our next mayor race, do you have ShopRites around you?
No.
Is that like East Coast specific? It's a grocery store.
Okay.
But ShopRite as a whole, they show up in like food deserts and stuff. I think they're generally like a grocery store to pop up in impoverished areas. But that guy is going, the guy that like owns ShopRite is going to run for mayor soon, and we have a soda tax in Philadelphia. So when the person owning the convenience stores is going to get rid of the soda tax, it's like that. I don't know. There's a lot of financial gain to be gained there.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I hear soda tax and I just think of Parks and Rec, so which is a similar kind of thing. So yeah, but I've got to say the ending of A Small Town with the ring, the gold.
It's so good.
It's just a perfect button on a completely wholesome episode, and it really brings together this whole storyline of his wife, the former mayor, and how like it's kind of overt, but like the symbol of their love and their relationship is what is going to make the community be able to rebuild and be a better community versus the mayor wanting to make a new Vegas out of it and everything.
True.
And talk about getting enough context about the character where it just it like you finally like it ends perfectly because of knowing that small detail of that character. It comes in a complete circle.
Absolutely.
I mean even that, like giving up your wedding ring for the greater good of the community. It's like,
yeah, and it being kind of just an accident, sort of, completely unintentional. And ordinarily, I would really dislike any kind of exposition dump or anything. So like the first like minutes of this episode is just delivering us this information. Then there's a 1 year jump, and it's like ordinarily I'd be like, okay, that's a little sloppy, but like that just it told us a bunch of pertinent backstory that's needed for the function of the rest of the episode. And I just thought it was structured really well.
I remembered my Can't Hardly Wait reference.
Oh, nice.
It was when he was, hey, you're gonna show me how this table works, and he said, I'm not gonna let you. And he says something like, who said anything about let? And then he like tries to like shake the table. That's where I was like, nobody, more like. Somebody, more like nobody.
I forget the guy's name, but he in Can't Hardly Wait is like the epitome of the like a funny cliche bully. Like funny cliche bully tactic or line is perfect.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what the mayor is. He's like he's not overtly like harmful. He's just this like dumb bully mayor.
Right. And that actor from Can't Hardly Wait was Peter Fasinelli.
Yes.
I don't know why I have such a I love that movie and everything, but he was also in a short-lived TV show called Fastlane with someone. It was like this flashy like Hawaii Five-0 kind of style thing.
That he feels like he'd be in that role.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. So, try. This next episode, try was, and we talked about it earlier and everything. By the way, I didn't ask you guys if you guys have like a time limit or anything, so I'm sorry if we're running long.
Nah, I was looking at it. I'm just worried about you having to upload like a 3-hour episode.
Oh, I'm good. I'm all set. It's all good. So, try is we talked about it earlier, but let's kind of dig into it, because this is an episode that I said A Small Town is my favorite episode of the whole series and everything, but honestly, Try might be a close second for an all-timer of these 2 seasons. I just adore it so much. So yeah, let's talk Try.
Any thoughts?
Yeah.
I don't know. You guys gotta start, so then I could roll.
I already said, but like Try, I would say is probably my best episode of the my favorite episode of the two seasons that we've got. It's just from everything, from the concept is fantastic. I think the character is fantastic. I think the casting is phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It's
the beginning of the episode, like that whole like prologue before the opening narration by Jordan Peele, is so like it is like you're in this rom-com meet cute setting, and it is they commit to that format, that genre and everything. And then it's so amazing to me that it's like, I mean, the opening narration, what triggers it is when him grabbing or catching the water as it's about to hit her, and like we're already like 5 minutes into that episode,
right.
And like that's the first inclination we have of anything Twilight Zone-y, and I'm like, the confidence of that is just like intoxicating. I love it. Yeah.
I'm huge when, I don't know. I love that at some point I was thinking in my head, like I forget there's a word for this, but when my emotions to something match perfectly with like the concepts of it, where I was watching it going, wow, some of these lines feel kind of like rehearsed, and lo and behold,
Yeah.
so it's like just so I'm, as an audience member, being like, wow, this is kind of cheesy. This feels kind of like planned. This kind of feels kind of like written so that it'd be like the perfect dialogue for every scenario. And then it turns out that that's exactly what was happening in the story. So it's like that level of my feelings matching perfectly with the actual storytelling of the story. I just gives me like euphoria. Like I love this episode.
So going into this, right, I was like, listen, I knew something's always up. Something's always up with every episode, but I knew something was up because it's Topher Grace. Okay. Topher Grace has that face that he is either the bad guy. He is like, I don't know if you watched the movie Predators, but he ends up being like a villain in the role, and it's just like, I knew you were him all along. And it's like even the type down to the glasses that he wears. I'm like, oh, I know he sums up with him. I don't like Topher Grace in movies because he's always like an asshole or the bad guy. But putting that aside, you're like, okay, sums up. But what's great about this movie, it's kind of like Hereditary, where you watch it the first time, you're like, oh, this is like really good. This is such a great concept. And then you go back to kind of like seeing all the details where he's planning for the whole meetup. Yeah. And it's just great. It's great to watch, and you just feel even more creeped out by it.
We had that when we watched the second time, because when he walks in
the museum,
when he walks into the museum, you can see him like standing there just kind of waiting for her to come in before he continues his plan.
Oh, that's all. I never caught that. Wow.
Yeah, he's literally like
he looks for her.
Yeah, he's literally at the desk with like ticket in hand, and he's just looking behind him, waiting for her to walk in before he continues anything.
That's so cool. Like this episode rewards. I would say out of the 20 episodes we got of this iteration of the Twilight Zone, this one rewards multiple viewings way more than any other episode.
It's built for it, especially because like the twist doesn't happen until like halfway through.
Yeah,
and the best thing about
I love that.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I was gonna say the best thing about this episode is you're actually cheering on these characters, like the girl the entire time. Because when she starts talking about how messed up of what he's doing is, you're like, I just remember watching this and Dan going like, right, yes, like this is wrong.
Yeah, because she's saying like there's inherent power dynamics. This is really creepy, and I'm like, yes, it is.
And it is so. It is such a well drawn commentary on like nice guyism and incel community and all of that fucking nonsense. And like I was just blown away by it because like I'm like right there. I'm like, yes, like the words the way that she describes why it's wrong for him to behave that way is like the clearest and best and most straightforward way to kind of just say like, yeah, there's power dynamics here and your rationalization is just bullshit. Like she gives him no leeway, and that's exactly how it should be, and that's fucking awesome.
What's really good too is that like because she's saying all the right things, she is like accurately describing why this is bad, and they get into like the topic of morality, where he's just like, I mean, for me, like, what is morality? Everything's just gonna like repeat every day. But then she is like, no, but for me it might continue. So like everything that you're doing has moral stakes, because this, for my universe, this is like a bad thing to do. And at that point he clearly didn't think that far ahead, and he said, let's just move on from this topic. Just so
it's like at that point it's like she's breaking through his sociopathic brain a little bit, and I was surprised, like and I found it a surprisingly hopeful ending, in which like it shows that like his next day, like she got through to him and he doesn't go to like approach her or anything like that. And then like that's maybe I'm just very cynical, but it's like I feel like the people that would be sympathetic to Mark in this episode, maybe they wouldn't really grasp that, like maybe they wouldn't learn from that type of interaction, I guess, which is a tragedy and horrible thought, but I like that in this context he learned from his experience.
Yeah, and especially because like you can see like the fakeness in a lot of the stuff that he says, where early on they have that like conversation about the poet or the writer, whoever, and he was like, is he canceled? I never liked him, actually. But then at the end he just starts saying all this stuff where it's like, if you actually cared about, he's like I'm sorry, did I trigger you? Like he says stuff that counter the kind of attitude that he had at the beginning when he was in that role.
Absolutely. And he even says, like, at one point he's like, I've changed myself for you over all of the days. And it's like, that's the problem. You're not your actual self and everything. It's a means to an end to be with her and everything. And it's gross.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Like even the thing is that even if you are able to create a scenario, like let's say a pickup artist came up with like the 100% this is how you pick up any girl book, just the fact that you are able to, and let's say just for the sake of argument that it was 100% effective, that is a book that is based on manipulating psychology to get a sexual advantage.
Absolutely.
Like, that in and of itself is a bad thing. so like the premise is there's no winning for him. Everything that Topher Grace is doing is gross.
Yep.
And what's great is like it's just a matter of points, and the way that when she starts realizing it, where at first it's like, yeah, you know, it's creepy. It's the fact that you practice. That's just, it's so slimy. Like, what do you mean practice? And he just keeps getting, digging himself more into this hole. And the fact that this time his approach, the last approach being is honesty, makes you think like, wow, out of all the 100 times, right? Like you've done this triple digits by now and you want to tell her the truth and you finally realize how messed up this is. It's just like it's crazy how far he gotten to just be like, let me just tell the truth. And then someone's like, yeah, this is actually really fucking creepy. And stop. And then he almost loses it to the point where he legit was going to try to rape her. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Yep.
And guess what? She kicked his ass, and that's even better.
Oh yeah. One of the things that when I was rewatching it to prepare my episode for it, one of the things that stood out to me that kind of disturbed me on the repeat viewing that I didn't pick up on was that when he tells her that his name is Mark with a C, and she chuckles and says that, like, oh, you know, when I was like in 8th grade, I had a crush on a guy named Mark with a C, and I thought the C was sexy. And then, like, my thought is this is an orchestrated scenario where he is manipulating her into, like, because his name, I think it's revealed later, it's Mark with a K, but he is telling her that it's Mark with a C specifically because he knows from other days that she found the C sexy when she was younger, and it's just like that level of manipulation is, again, gross.
Basically, it's weird because in real life there are weird dudes that are like, if I hold the door enough times I can cash in my nice guy points and get a date. But
the bagel
like,
boss,
for him, but he's basically like, he is gamifying the situation where he's like, if I do this, I'll get a point. If I do this, I get a point. And I know that if I get like this many nice guy points and I go on a date and this many nice guy points gets me to second base, it's like he's manipulating every situation he's basically like when you're replaying a video game to get the high score. It's
absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say the point about the pickup artist books and everything. There was a show called The Pickup Artist that
the VH1 show, The Pickup Artist.
Yeah. And like, I was going to say, like, like the listeners can't see me, but I'm wearing like this big, feathery hat to peacock and everything.
This is the man trying to tell other men how to get women.
Yes.
I mean,
that even what's weird is that they don't work.
Right.
But it's a field that is based on manipulating women.
Yes.
And what the men don't realize is that they're being manipulated into buying books. Like, they're literally being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Out of their desperation.
Right.
So it's a little irony there for these weird dudes.
Absolutely.
What's crazy is that, like, at this point, he's done everything right with this woman and sleeping with her and forming this relationship with her. And his ultimate goal for today was, I'm going to tell the truth and we're going to fall in love.
Right.
Now, tell me at this point, you're not like, that's just, you need help.
Yeah. The sense of entitlement and the fact that, like, he believes that he deserves to be with her, if only just because that's what he believes is, like, not even... He even says at one point that it doesn't matter if, like, she's the key to stopping the time loop and everything. Like, that's not a thing, or that's not on his mind. It's just like he wants to be with her forever, or wants her for real. And It's like he does not consider her position on that because, you know,
no, not at all.
Yeah, it's such a well written episode.
It's crazy too because, like, if assuming that it's like the same kind of rules as Groundhog Day, it's Bill Murray ultimately got out of the time loop when he became a better person.
Right.
When he worked on his terrible character flaws. And obviously, if going on this date, and you said that sometimes the manufactured scenario that you created has successfully ended in, like, good dates, and the time loop continued, obviously this isn't the end goal, man. Like, you gotta
It's crazy people's fixation on things, because, like, you even said, like, Bill Murray tried just many things. He was not focused on a conquest with women, but I'm not saying that everybody is like that.
He did bang women.
He did bang multiple women. And mind you, yes, but I'm saying with his obsession, because I know the specific theme is, like, you know, obsessing over somebody and just how men can be impulsive when it comes to these small details within a relationship with somebody. But it's just, I don't know, it's crazy, but it's so good because I feel so uncomfortable every single time.
I was saying that, like, so because the days repeat, if she can physically overpower him, he can never gain muscle. He is that size for the rest of the time.
Wow. Yeah, I did not consider that.
So it's like maybe if he took the time, he could do like some kind of jujitsu or something. But like just from raw physical power, like he's gonna get his ass kicked every time.
Oh, absolutely. Did you guys watch the Hulu movie with Andy Samberg, Palm Springs?
No, but I do want to.
It is so interesting that this episode came out the same year that Palm Springs came out, because it's a time loop story, and it's a really great movie. I recommend it. So that's my recommendation for you guys. It pairs well with Try.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm into that.
Nice.
I mean, the concept is phenomenal, I think, for this episode. And I think, what was I going to say? I don't know. It's just perfect, because I think this is the thing that I want to see more often, to just be like, let's not normalize this, right? We need to just talk about how messed up and uncomfortable these kinds of, not the time loop thing, but just the nice guys.
We need to normalize time loops.
We need to normalize time loops so we can have people become better people. But just the tactics that I think men try to get women, it's just,
just be yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole idea of gamifying dating, like you said, is just, it's absurd, it's disgusting, and it's something that it is something that is real, like the sense of entitlement and everything, and the kind of themes that this episode plays with is a real issue in our like kind of culture. And I think the kind of communal aspect of the internet kind of has made that over the years more prevalent and more isolated, and makes it more radicalized, I guess would be the word.
Yeah, it's 100% more radicalized now. It's men who are like maybe socially awkward in high school think that that's going to be the rest of their lives, and that they can never talk to a woman. Not that they should ever change themselves, but just the fact that all women hate men.
Right.
If women don't like me, they must have a problem with the entire gender.
Yeah, like that internalized like anger that comes up because someone is socially awkward or doesn't know how to talk to other human beings, so they internalize that as not being able to work on themselves and everything. Like I'll say it, like in high school I was incredibly socially awkward. I was incredibly I had tons of anxiety and everything, but like I didn't know how to talk to girls or anything. I didn't know how to, like, I didn't date in high school because I just was in my head and everything. And like, if you're listening to this and you're in high school and you're in that position, you'll grow up, you'll get a cat, and you'll start podcasts. So it's fine.
Amen.
But no, just treat people like other human beings. It's not that hard. Yes.
And I mean, speaking as a woman herself who's also been very socially awkward and hasn't been what is a dating life really, but it happens to the best of us.
Sometimes you marry the first guy you date.
Yeah, it just ends up happening. But yeah, what was I trying to say with that?
That you love me. And
that I do. Me. And yes. Now everybody knows their history. And but the thing is, it's just everybody's on the same boat. But I think with men specifically, it's just there just has to be ways of just coping with moving on, right? Like if things don't necessarily work out for you, you just try someone else. And I hate the thing where like That's why I liked about what Meet in the Middle did, where this guy was super picky about what he wanted in like a person. And it's just like, that's not how that works. Like you get what you get. And if you don't like it, then you just move on. But I think a lot of people, and with like incel culture and internet culture, where it's like, oh, if it's not like this particular thing that they like and it's just lame, or you just try to find something to just hate on them. But it's like, dude, let this girl just do her thing.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
There's this idea. I think people have this idea that they have to be the perfect fit for someone else. And that's kind of what this entire episode is about, is like molding yourself to be the perfect match.
Right.
And honestly, that would be the worst relationship ever. Okay. They would run out of things to talk about tomorrow if the next day came, because he's talked about everything that she likes.
Yeah.
And kind of the point of a relationship is to have what that word means, is a relationship. You kind of vibe with each other, you fill in the cracks. And like that, I don't know. If you're like with someone that is identical to you, it's just not going to be fun, and it's going to get old, and you're going to get bored, and you're going to find someone else that's different. It's just kind of how it goes.
It's like the whole point of a relationship, what makes relationships work, is that growing together kind of aspect to it.
100%.
It's not like, it's not saying the right things at the perfect moment and everything, and just creating this scenario where it's like, oh, immediately just like a spark and falling in love and everything. It's like, it's growing together and like sharing a life together and everything, which is
and that, I would say, outside, even prior to a relationship, just when you're like flirting with someone, don't be this like person that it's like, oh, you like that book? Me too. Oh, you like this? Me 100%.
Yep.
It's like, have opinions.
Right.
Opinions are attractive. They're not cringy.
Yep.
Absolutely. And this is just good with forming, besides like a general like relationship with somebody, just like with friendships and just how to generally talk to people.
Yeah.
Imagine me coming on this podcast and being like, yes, Matt, I agree with all of your opinions. You have the best opinions.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, same with me, like, oh, okay, you guys really loved 8. Yeah. That's my favorite episode ever.
That was my favorite too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So
I don't know.
Try is such a standout. I love it so much. It's really great. So shall we talk about the finale you might also like? And I said that like I had like a drop or something prepared. I don't. So I was really excited about this episode because I had seen To Serve Man at the screening that they did, the 60th anniversary thing. And so I was like, oh, okay.
You remember a movie?
Oh my God. Yeah. I miss it so much. It's like, it's rough. As someone who went to the movie theater like every week, sometimes multiple times a week, the fact that I have not been to a movie theater in over a year is like physically painful to me.
I know. It sucks.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know. I have a hard time watching like renting movies. So it's like we would go to the theater and that would be like our date for like the end of each week or something, or maybe like a random Tuesday we go to the movies.
The thing that was so funny was when I had my appointment to get vaccinated, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I get to go to the city and I'm just going to live out my fantasy of how much I miss the city and I love walking around. And literally I am not, I don't like any physical exercise. So for me to walk literally everywhere around Philadelphia got me super excited. But one of those things was visiting like just kind of movie theaters. Like then there was one specific one that I had to pass by. It was just so sad because it said we're closed until, further notice. And it was just, I don't know. It just got me down to this like hole that I'm like, no, you're in the city, but just move on. You can't go watch movies. And I'm like, but that was my purpose when I went down there.
Yeah. Ugh. It's rough. It's rough. But yeah, so I saw that in the movie theater, and so I was prepared for You Might Also Like, and I honestly haven't revisited it since for a while now, but
since June,
pretty much since June. I think I rewatched it sometime over the pandemic, but I feel like I liked it a little bit more than a lot of people seem to have liked it. And so I'm curious what you guys thought. But overall, I thought it was just weird and kind of fun in an interesting way to kind of pay homage to the original series in a unique way. How did you guys like? You might also like.
I thought it was decent. Yeah. I didn't get too hung up on. I think people's disappointment came from the fact that this wasn't like a direct sequel to Serve Man.
Right.
I kind of just view it as another episode that has cannabis in it, like another alien race episode. But like at the root of it, it's almost a Black Mirror episode to me, where if instead of aliens, imagine we came up with a way of corporations being able to show you commercials in your dreams that are tailored towards your experience.
Yeah. Huh. That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first there's billboards, and then you put like then your elevators aren't safe, and then your brain isn't safe. It's like,
yep.
or remember that one Black Mirror episode where it was like the guy couldn't close his eyes or else the ad would not continue.
Yeah. Oh
Ooh,
man.
bad.
That 15 million merits is that episode.
I feel like the when you originally watched the To Serve Man episode, maybe it's like your first time. I'm not saying you're expecting any gore, because I mean the premise is like, oh, these aliens are eating humans and stuff, but I feel like you get a sense of that towards the end of this episode where you're like, oh, this is actually what happens to the humans. You get like a visualization of what happens, which is really terrifying, and in the form of children.
Yeah.
With eggs specifically, like the thing you were mentioning earlier. And I'm like, well, that's great. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to connect to the previous story. It's like it's world building.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, wow, like it's my favorite episode. But I thought it was fun. You know, they didn't do a similar thing. But I mean, it's like in the season 1 with Nightmare at 3,000 or 30,000 feet or something. Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, it's paying an homage and yada yada. This was like that episode for season 2 with To Serve Man. But it wasn't bad. It was fine. It wasn't like my favorite, but it was a fine episode.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. So as soon as the Canamitz reveal themselves, I was like, oh, okay, this is really kind of crazy. Like, and it frustrated me because I think like the day before the season launched, the press went crazy and was like, oh, this is a sequel to Serve Man. And like they showed like it wasn't even necessarily the press. It was like CBS All Access sent like press materials saying like, oh, the Canamitz are in this episode and everything. It's like, why spoil that?
Yeah, I actually, I think I would like it if we didn't know going in.
Absolutely.
Because that's kind of the whole point.
Oh, totally. And having it be the finale is like, that could have been such a fun surprise for people to go through and not really have much connection with the original series, and then have this final episode be like super connected in a sense to the original series is just, that could have been a fun surprise. But overall, I love it for the weirdness and just how just weird and crazy it is, and also the comedy kind of works for me. Like when she's talking to like the Canamitz queen or whatever, and like the Canamitz, they're like, well, we've studied your world, and like when I can't remember exactly what they say, but it's like something like your Beatles destroyed Jesus or something like that. Or
yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's like, wait, that's not right.
Yeah, and there was the line of like, and the trials of your kings, and we watch your towers fall. And I was curious. I was like, with like the timeline that she just laid out, like, maybe she thinks like the Rodney King trials were like actually a king.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
There's kind of like these like this disconnect of like what actually is being presented versus what they're perceiving, which is cool and fun. I like it
totally. And kind of on another level with that, sorry, it seems like that could just be an extension of the television thing, like them only intercepting television signals. So like the Rodney King trial being, very publicized on television and everything, that's how they get that information. So that's interesting.
And it's like, I think the reason why I vibe with this episode, I really like this episode actually. It's just kind of anytime a piece of media wants to take shots at capitalism, I'm all about it. And this episode is like hardcore that, where it like everyone's kind of wearing the same clothes and everyone's driving the same cars and everyone's decorating their houses the same way. And we know that that's because of like the commercials that the Knabbits are creating to like force you to like get very specific things. But it could also be like in the we see capitalism as this thing that like breeds creativity and options. But what happens when Under Armour buys all the other corporations? Now you can only buy Under Armour clothes, and it's like kind of I get kind of vibes like that. And I'm when she's talking to the queen and she says stuff like, you watch our commercials? We don't even watch our commercials anymore. We skip through them. The queen is kind of like, yeah, but you're building emotional attachments to other things and we can manipulate those things, which is actually like a very pressing issue right now that I feel doesn't get talked about a lot, which is corporations hijacked cancel culture. Corporations, like with the Mr. Potato Head stuff, where everyone got mad that a corporation made a private decision to change the way that they are going to continue like using their brand. Right. And to respond to that by buying the products before they remove like Mr. or whatever, you're literally giving them money because they're making a change in the way that they're presenting themselves. Like you're literally just buying it, and not to talk about like the endless amounts of free advertising you're giving every time you make a emotionally charged Facebook post.
So oh my God. So that's completely, I didn't even think about it like that, but you just made me think about that one, like Euphoria came out with like 2 special episodes before I guess season 2. One of them was just dedicated to like Zendaya's character Rue, and it was the episode just is a whole dialogue driven episode about her and her sponsor, and he talks about that briefly about like even with like Nike being like all Black Lives Matter, and it knows that it gets it's going to get criticisms, but it's getting people to buy more Nike or just like trash it or just getting it.
Yeah. Hey, guess you know what happens when you just bought Nikes and you burn them and in 3 years you're looking for a pair of shoes? Like you're going to buy more shoes. Like, so for me, like this episode, I kind of had a connection with because I felt that there was voice given to this emotionally driven secret advertising that is happening and will continue to happen. Definitely. I mean, commercials are going away more and more, right? That's where we're doing like product placement didn't really used to exist, and now like Dunkin' Donuts is in every single show that you watch.
Right.
So it's advertising is evolving and people aren't realizing it, I would say.
Yeah, and just to go back to the Mr. Potato Head thing, when that news happened, my immediate reaction was like, if you're an adult who has really any opinion about what they call Mr. Potato Head, you've already lost there.
I gotta tell you, at no point did I see the potato with a mustache and be like, he probably has a dick.
Right.
Like it's not relevant to me.
No.
But it's also like the reason why they're doing that is because they can now have like blind bags of potato head parts. It doesn't have to be gendered. And it's just a good corporate decision for their brand. But conservatives are angry about everything. So
whether it's that or like the Dr. Seuss or the character or cartoon debacles.
I can't believe that they're not going to continue to publish 6 books I've never read before.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I better buy all Dr. Seuss books tomorrow before the rest of them are canceled. It's
The bunny needs boobies.
I need to buy as many Dr. Seuss books before the people who publish the Dr. Seuss books stop making it, because I'm angry at them for doing that. Like what
exactly.
the fuck?
Like people don't realize the like circular nature of what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's like business makes decision that appeases woke culture. Conservatives get mad. The woke people are like, oh, cool, you did a nice thing. And the conservative people are like, this is bullshit. I better buy the product real quick.
Oh, what a fun world we live in.
Oh my God, it's terrifying.
But this episode also deals with, not to transition into a darker subject, but her dealing with the loss of her child also.
Right.
Like there's that scene in the nursery and everything, and like the way that she accepts the egg is because she hasn't gotten over her trauma of losing the child and everything. And it's just such a, I don't know, it's a weird juxtaposition of having just really bleak undercurrent. I almost said Under Armour, which is now
It's working.
It's working, yeah. But having,
I mean, even that, right?
Yeah.
Even that,
Exactly.
we just fucking did it. That
Exactly.
is product placement.
Yep. So now I'm gonna subtly include the word Patreon in my next sentence. But anyway, having this bleak undercurrent of just like this painful storyline in juxtaposing that with this heightened, almost comedic depiction of the aliens and of this weird world that is inhabiting this episode is just, it works for me. And it was just kind of a unique kind of juxtaposition of those two things. Patreon.
Yeah. I love the scene where there's the three aliens in the yard just like trying to talk over each other and stuff because they're shared minds, they're all speaking at the same time. I feel like so often when we do like alien stuff, it's like, everyone's super smart and like this is the advanced race, but like no, there's gonna be dumb aliens.
Yeah.
There's gonna be customer service aliens.
That just reminds me of like again, we're gonna have to reference Simpsons again, but with the One Treehouse horror episode with the aliens, and it's also like a take on the Twilight Zone where they're trying to cook them.
Yep.
With the book scene where they're like, see the reveal, and there's like at least 3 reveals.
It was like how to cook humans, how to cook for humans,
How to cook 40 humans.
40 humans. But yeah, like there's gonna be just
great.
like, and he was like sad. The one alien was sad because he was cooking, and it's like, The Simpsons is peak comedy for like 8 seasons, but
perfect. Yeah.
I mean, I always think of like these crash landings, right? For like supposedly aliens crash landed into Mars. It's like, oh, so we would get like the hillbilly aliens, where it's like. Like the smart ones would know how to drive their saucers and avoid certain areas, but like the drunk hicks would just crash into Earth.
Oh wow, yeah, I hadn't considered that really, and that is, I hope I hope aliens exist, but I hope they're smart ones.
I hope they come. No, I don't want smart aliens. Smart aliens would come and use us in some way or another. I've seen enough alien movies.
Yeah.
I want to cook me.
Right. But yeah, I like this episode, and it's weird to kind of recontextualize it as like, oh, this is the series finale. And I mean, I'm sure it wasn't the intention when they made it or when they placed it as the final episode of this season. I don't know if they had made that decision prior to the season airing or anything, but I think it's an interesting kind of just off the wall, crazy episode to kind of end the series with.
Yeah. I genuinely liked it. I don't know. Something for overall. I wish that like Zazie Beetz showed up as a narrator at some point.
Yeah, That would have been really interesting, an avenue to go down, especially after the end of the first season, obviously.
Mhm.
It would have been interesting to, at the very least, kind of continue that meta kind of thread.
Right.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
Because I kind of, and that to me, the idea of like opening up to there's this like there's certain gifted people that are given the ability to be like the narrator, the storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that kind of opened the door if like Jordan Peele didn't want to do like 10 episodes and he only just wanted to do like a guest appearance here or there. Like it opened the door to having other narrators and that could add to the longevity of the show and stuff like that. But
this is definitely that's something refreshing because it's not something you would typically see. Oh, let's take control of who can be or can't be the narrator.
Right.
Yeah,
But
it kind of creates this like extra dimensional layer of like these are storytellers and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I was definitely not I originally didn't know how to feel about this episode, but after having this conversation, I definitely rank it higher. It probably is going to be right next to like 8 or something, but because of how weird it is, and also I don't know their decision making why, but on one hand, maybe because it's like there was so many, I guess, other references in the first season that I feel like they're going to have something that's kind of connects it to like the older season and have that be like the last thing and be like, hey, we all remember that. And then this is like the biggest connection that they have the entire season.
I do think adding the queen does add like a fresh take to it, though.
I was going to say, I love her design. I love the queen's design. But,
me too.
And it's like she lays the eggs that kill people. It's like
really cool stuff. So we can kind of start winding down. I've taken up so much of your guys' day.
It happens. Hey, when you start talking, you just keep talking, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So to kind of start to wrap up, I have ranked. We all have rankings, I think. Do we?
There is a pish posh ranking in front of us that I think has changed through the course of this conversation.
Gotcha. Same with me. Like I've made 2 changes to mine. I'll just kind of do my rankings and you guys can do yours and then we can kind of wrap up, I guess. For me, I have at number 10 Ovation, and then 8 is number 9, which pains me because I wanted it to be 8, but you know, then Downtime, and then number 7 is actually You Might Also Like, and then A Human Face is number 6, The Who of You number 5, Among the Untrodden number 4, Meet in the Middle 3, Try 2, and A Small Town at number 1. That's my ranking, and yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with it. Overall, I thought the season was really good. How about you guys?
Do you want to give yours?
I
make any modifications you need?
A little bit of modifications. I'm probably going to switch. I'm gonna go with Try being number 1, and then I'm gonna have A Small Town being number 2, and then Meet in the Middle, then The Who of You, followed by 8. Then it's You Might Also, then Downtime, Among the Trodden, Ovation, and then A Human Face.
Oh, interesting. Okay, nice. And Dan?
Matt, where'd you put Human Face?
I put that at number 6.
Interesting.
So kind of lower tier, middle of the road kind of episode for me.
Okay. Do I start at 10 or 1?
I didn't even know where to start.
Yeah. I started at 10, and halfway through reading them, I realized like, oh, that's probably going to be a nightmare to listen to. So I don't know.
I'm gonna go 1 to 10. I'm gonna go
nice.
Anna and I are gonna be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that Try is 1. I'm going to say that I forget what Anna said already, but I feel like we're going to mirror each other. I'm going to say Try is 1. Small Town is 2. I think the Meet in the Middle is 3. The Who of You is 4. 8 is 5, or 5 is 8. I don't know.
No, eight is 5.
Okay, 8 is 5. I'm going to do. You might also like at 6.
Nice.
I'm going to do Among the Untrodden at 7, Downtime at 8, Ovation at 9, and Human Face at 10.
Nice. Okay.
That sounds right to me. That
Yeah.
sounds right to me.
Nice. Well, that's our rankings, and everyone listening, you can reach out to us and yell at us for where we have our rankings and everything.
I encourage it, man. I'm open to discussion. If you give a point that I didn't think of, I'll be like, "Fuck, you're right. That's a great episode."
Nice. And on that note, why don't you guys tell everyone where they can find you online and where to find Between Science and Superstition?
Bro, I haven't done this like.
Dan, I'm gonna take you let that one.
I know I haven't done this in like months.
Mhm.
The best way to find everything we do is to go to bsaspod.com or betweenscienceandsuperstition.com if you want to type a lot. You can follow us on Twitter at bsaspod, and I personally am on Twitter at Dan Rennie. Anna is at _
Anna edits.
Anna edits because she's an editor.
Nice.
I mean, yeah.
I like cringed at that a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's fine. Not everyone can get their name, okay?
Right.
I'm lucky enough to have gotten my name when I was like 13, and then I lost that account, and I like brute forced my way back into it. I was like, oh my God, I'm Dan Rennie.
I'm not talking about my name. It's just the editing thing. And I'm like,
Oh,
yes,
my
I
bad.
do.
Oh, my
But no, I appreciate it. Thank you for keeping that passion alive.
Nice. My original Twitter account that I had for like a personal Twitter account that is, from when I first started was at my Matt Hurts. Which I was really proud of that, and then I started Obsessive Viewer, and I was like, oh, I need a fucking brand and everything, so
Yeah.
add Obsessive Viewer. But yeah,
Hey man, it works.
yeah. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me for this extended chat about the Twilight Zone season 2. I hope that we have done justice to this series that I was a fan of overall, and yeah, I don't know when you guys are planning on relaunching your podcast, but I can't wait, and I love what you guys do, and also your website looks just gorgeous, and I just want to
thank you.
compliment you guys on that.
Aw.
Yeah, because I just have like just a WordPress, just cheap, like not cheap, but free thing.
Yeah.
And so like just the amount of work that clearly went into making a presentable website is really evident, and I really like it.
And I gotta tell you, I'm not a web designer. This shit is hard.
I can
It's
only
hard to make
imagine.
a good website.
Yeah.
man.
Oh yeah. But it looks great, and yeah, I hope to see more of your guys' stuff in the future. No pressure or anything.
No, I hope that I think that now that the world is getting like more okay, I'm in a better mental health position to do stuff. I know we're winding down, but it's like I've written like several scripts. I've even shot some like
nice.
video essays, and I just like I don't know if I'm just like in a mental position where I'm like, nah, it sucks, can't put it out. But like that's kind of a position that I think we both fall into, is that we outside of the podcast, we do like creatives work, and then we're both just like too hard on ourselves to actually put it out.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, I get that.
but I think like as the world gets better, as our mindsets get better, I think we'll actually put more and more stuff out.
Sweet.
Let's give ourselves a timeline of this year. At some point this year, we will have something out.
Nice.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And Matt, I thank you so much. I really
of
do
course.
appreciate all the love that you give us when we don't give ourselves that love often. And by all means, the love goes right back to you, sir, with your with Anthology and everything that you do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about doing podcasting is meeting and interacting with other podcasters and everything. And yeah, I really like what you guys do. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Matthew.
Thank you. All right, well, that'll do it for this bonus episode of Anthology. Thank you guys so much for listening. And obviously, links to everything will be in the show notes. And yeah, that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. Which I thought that was an interesting way to reintroduce the Falcon as well. It seemed like that opening scene was by design meant to be similar and to mimic to an extent the opening sequence of the Winter Soldier, because both Falcon and Captain America in their respective ones. So in the Winter Soldier, we get I keep wanting to say Chris Evans. We get Captain America. Why can't I think of his name? Jesus Christ. We get Cap in the plane, and he's about to go on a mission and everything, and then he jumps down, and that's where he fights Batroc the Leaper. And in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we've got Sam in a plane. He's about to jump down to do a mission, and the mission involves Batroc the Leaper. So I just thought that was an interesting correlation, an interesting way to kind of signify the passing of the torch or the passing of the mantle. However,
Anthology is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to anthologypod.com/archive. You can also like the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod and follow the show on Twitter at OVAnthologyPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at anthologypod.com/donate or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. Official Anthology merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, can be found in the Obsessive Viewer's TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at anthologypod.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at tpublic.com. For information about the Obsessive Viewer's annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com, and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Tower Junkies, a podcast where Matt and co-host Tiny share their love of all things Stephen King and his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, over at towerjunkiespod.com and at towerjunkiespod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Bumper music for this podcast comes courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. You can also find As Good As It Gets music on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Kitty!